The anime begins with Tohru, a cheerful girl who lives in a tent in the middle of the forest. On her way to school, she is curious about a big house, which she had not seen yet. She approaches it and is curious about the Zodiac knickknacks that are inside. Then a man sees her and is surprised to realize that Tohru knows about the Zodiac, and she says that the set is missing the cat from the folktale Old Zodiac. She knows the old story because her mother told it to her as a child before going to sleep. It turns out that the mouse lied to the cat about the day of the Zodiac race and did not attend, so the cat was excluded from the Zodiac forever. Suddenly, Yuki, a classmate of Tohru's, appears and scolds his cousin for flirting with Tohru. He is Soma's Shigure. Tohru excuses herself by saying that she lives near her, although the boys find it strange, so Yuki invites her to walk with him to school. But when they get to school, Tohru is pulled aside by Motoko and Yuki's fan club, and they recite the rules for her to stay away from him. Fortunately, Tohru's friends, Utani and Hana, appear and look so intimidating that Motoko and Yuki's other fans run away scared. In home economics class, Utani and Hana tell Tohru that Yuki is strange. Last year, a girl wanted to hug him and he pushed her away, but they are interrupted by the teacher, and Tohru shows her that they have already cooked everything. Later, Utani and Hana invite Tohru to go shopping with them, but she has to go to work and her friends worry because she works too much, and they don't even know that Tohru lives in a tent in the forest. After that, Tohru meets Yuki, and he apologizes for his cousin once again, but she says that he was very kind and she really liked the Zodiac knickknacks, and Yuki says that he heard her talking about the cat, and he thinks that there was never a place for the cat because it is mathematically impossible to include one more Zodiac, and he thinks that the cat was an idiot, and Tohru thinks that Yuki hates cats. At work, Tohru remembers how she ended up in this situation. She lost her father when she was 3 years old, and then years later her mother, so she went to live with her grandfather. And to not be a burden, she started working to pay her expenses and tuition. The problem came months later when her grandfather's house needed renovation, and Tohru told her grandfather that she would live with some friends, but in reality she put up a tent in the forest to live. That night, Yuki and Shigure walk through the forest towards their house and see Tohru and decide to follow her, and are very surprised to see her enter a tent, and she feels guilty of being discovered living without permission in the Soma family forest. So she asks them to let her live in her tent, but suddenly she gets dizzy because she worked so hard today, and Shigure hears the howl of a wolf and says that there was a landslide. They all go to Tohru's tent and she gets desperate because her mother's photo is in the tent buried underground. She is very exhausted, and Shigure suggests that she sleep at their house tonight and tomorrow she can get the photo of her mother back. At home, she tells Shigure that she works hard because she wants to finish high school, something that her mother could not do, and she does not plan to give up even if everything goes wrong because she has experienced worse things, such as not having said goodbye to her mother the day she went to work and passed away. Yuki feels sorry for Tohru and tells Shigure that he will take care of the matter, and mysteriously, some rats dig in the ground where Tohru's photo and belongings are buried. The next morning, Yuki gives Toast her things and tells her that it is a secret how he managed to get them out, and says that she can stay and live there until the renovation of her house is finished, and Shigure offers her to clean and cook since they are terrible at it. Tohru can't believe the offer, and it seems like a dream come true, while Yuki tells Shigure that everything will be fine as long as she doesn't hug him. Suddenly, an orange-haired boy named Kyo comes crashing through the ceiling and challenges Yuki to a fight by calling him Rat Boy, but Yuki just makes fun of him. Tohru gets scared and tries to stop the impending fight, but slips and hugs Kyo from behind. Surprisingly, Kyo transforms into a cat, and she can't believe what is happening, and fortunately for them, a board falls on Tohru's head and she leans on Shigure and Yuki, causing them to turn into a rat and a dog. Kyo's dissatisfaction, Shigure tells the truth to Tohru. Some members of the Soma family are possessed by Zodiac spirits. Although they do not have superpowers, they only become the Zodiac animal and can communicate with said animal. They turn into animals when they are hugged by a girl and get sick. Luckily, they turn back into humans after a while. After returning to normal, Kyo challenges Yuki to a fight again and accidentally hits Tohru. Yuki gets angry and accepts the fight, beating him up as always while Shigure heals Tohru's wound. Suddenly, Tohru remembers school and runs to put on her uniform, while Shigure tells Yuki that he will go to inform Aikido, the head of the family, of everything that happened, and Yuki is resigned because he knows that Tohru's memory will be erased like all those who discover his secret. At school, Tohru hides the secret of the Soma family, and that makes Yuki feel guilty. He tells her that they are going to erase her memory as happened once in the past. It turns out that when Yuki was a kid, a girl hugged him and he turned into a rat in front of everyone, so Aikido, the head of the family, erased the memory of all the children who saw him. Before he leaves, Tohru slips and falls on Yuki's back and he turns into a rat again. She tells him that she understands what they are going to do to her and asks him that when she forgets him, he become her friend again. At home, Kyo tries to apologize to Tohru, but he blushes and doesn't tell her, and Shigure tells them that Hino has decided not to erase Toru's memory, she just has to keep the secret, and Yuki thinks that Shigure and Akito are up to something. The next day, Yuki is surprised to see the kitchen clean and the food ready, since he hasn't eaten homemade food in a long time, but suddenly, Kyo and Shigure enter the house arguing. It turns out that starting tomorrow, Kyo will go to school with them, and that makes Yuki very angry. Shigure explains to Tohru that Kyo wasn't going to school because he was training martial arts in the mountains to beat Yuki. Tohru sadly thinks that Kyo wants to beat Yuki because in the old Zodiac folktale, it was the rat's fault that the cat is not a Zodiac. The next day, Kyo attracts a lot of attention at school for being Yuki's cousin, especially the girls who surround him to find out more about him. But when one of them touches him, he jumps like a scared cat and flees out the window. Yuki goes to look for him and asks him to think before acting, but Kyo complains because they are in a mixed school and not in an all-boys school like Akito wants, so Yuki says that he doesn't want to be locked up forever in what Akito wants, and he doesn't understand why Kyo wants to belong to them so much. Kyo gets angry because Yuki doesn't understand how he feels about not being fully part of the Soma family and wants to hit him, but is stopped by Tohru, who accidentally hugs him, and Kyo transforms into a cat. Kyo gets very angry and starts yelling at Tohru, and she whines because she thinks he hates her. Later at home, Kyo is discouraged and tells Shigure that he always ends up saying mean things to Tohru, and she says that he just needs to practice how to interact with people because one day in the future, a girl will tell him that loves him and he has to be ready to treasure her. But Kyo says that such a girl does not exist. After that, Yuki interrupts them saying that he's going to look for Tohru at work because he doesn't want her to walk alone through the forest, but the one who's going to look for her is Kyo. He tries to apologize to her, although he keeps blushing, and she accepts his apology, saying that she loves the Zodiac cat, and if she could have chosen what year to be born, she would have been born in the year of the cat. They manage to mend their budding friendship, but at home, Shigure embarrasses Kyo by saying that he personally offered to pick up Tohru from work, and Kyo blushes so much that says he won't do it anymore, and then he gets angry at Yuki for looking at him and ends by saying that he doesn't like Tohru's food, even though it's not true. The culture festival is approaching and the class votes to set up a rice ball stand. Tohru suggests that the rice balls have different fillings and Yuki agrees, while Kyo suggests that the diners fight fiercely over a free rice ball and everyone rejects the idea, and to make matters worse, many kittens enter through the window to play with Kyo, who, embarrassed, flees to the roof of the school. Tohru follows him and sees that a lot of other kittens are surrounding him, and Kyo says that it is a normal thing with the animals they represent. She is worried about him and asks him if he will participate in the festival, but Kyo sadly thinks that they don't need him because they have Yuki, and his whole life has been like that since they were children. Yuki has surpassed him in everything. After that, they return to the classroom and Mutani challenges Kyo to a card game. The loser must clean the classroom, while Yuki is in the library because a girl summoned him there to declare her love for him, although he rejects her and she complains that he is very close to others. When he returns to the classroom, he sees with a little envy how Kyo is able to open up to other people even in a card game. Unfortunately, Kyo loses, and while cleaning the classroom, Yuki makes fun of him for having lost, and that only makes Kyo want to beat him more. All the talk leaves Tohru thinking, and she concludes that if Kyo ever beats Yuki, the cat will be included in the Zodiac. As Yuki is in a bad mood, he quickly defeats Kyo with a kick and leaves. Hours later, as Tohru leaves work, she runs into a foreign boy who seems to know her, although she runs away from him when the foreign boy kisses her on the cheek, and does not realize that she dropped a culture festival pamphlet. Outside, she runs into Yuki, who came to walk her home. She remembers that he was acting strange in the afternoon and asks him if there is something that worries him, but some drunk men walk rudely by and push Tohru, who falls on top of Yuki, and he turns into a rat. As they walk home, Yuki says that he always felt caged while living with his parents, and that's why he decided to go to a mixed school, although he feels that he still hasn't been able to get out of the cage, unlike Kyo, who is shy at first, but he manages to make friends naturally. He doesn't understand why he would want to be part of something so restrictive. Then Tohru realizes that the two boys invite each other, but when she's about to say something, it starts to rain and Yuki turns back into a human. They run home and Shigure says that a typhoon is going to hit the town, and Yuki runs to look for something. Tohru follows him and discovers that Yuki's secret base is a vegetable garden, and she helps him cover it with a tarp. Yuki tells her that she is very kind, but Tohru says that her mom used to say that humans are not born with kindness, but that kindness grows over the years in different forms, and his kindness has the shape of a candle, which it shines brightly at times, so she thinks they can be good friends. After the storm, he thanks her for her words and says that he wants to play cards with her friends because he wants to interact with more people. The next day, Tohru cooks rice balls and Kito prepares his own, and she praises his perfect technique, but he says it's nothing special. So she says that humans are like rice balls filled with plums. They are so focused on seeing the plum on the back of the rice ball that they don't notice that they are also filled with plums and think that they are just white rice. So Tohru encourages Kyo to see his own talents without focusing so much on Yuki. For her, they are both special. Kyo understands her analogy and says that he can see the plum on her back too, which makes her happy. At that moment, Yuki enters and starts fighting with Kyo over the rice balls, and Tohru wonders if one day they could be friends. Suddenly, someone rings the doorbell and Tohru encounters a mysterious girl who asks if Kyo lives there. She is Kagura, a girl who looks cute and runs inside the house looking for Kyo. Tohru thinks she's going to hug him tenderly, but instead, Kagura beats him up in the garden. Shigure says that this is Kagura's way of expressing affection and tells Tohru that Kagura is a Zodiac too and challenges her to guess which one she is. After calming down, Kagura tells Tohru that she is Kyo's fiancé, but Kyo complains saying that is not true, and she reminds him that they got engaged when they were children, and he reminds her that he only accepted her because she in his life, and from that moment on, he always runs away from her. Kagura does not understand why he does not want to marry her since she is a Zodiac girl and they can hug each other without transforming. This surprises Tohru, and she is delighted to meet the other Zodiac girl. Tohru can't believe that Kagura can feel so much love for someone at her age since she hasn't fallen in love with anyone yet, and that makes her feel a little jealous. After that, Tohru goes to cook, but Kagura interrupts her saying that she will cook for Kyo's and prepares an abundant banquet since she used all the food in the refrigerator. Then Kagura calls Kyo to eat, but he refuses to go and wants her to leave. But she insists so much that she throws him on the table and all the food falls and is ruined. Kagura wants to cook again, but she used all the ingredients. Kyo tells her to leave again, but she doesn't listen to him and runs to the store. The boys want to order delivery, but Tohru asks them to wait for her and runs for Kagura. After shopping, Kagura asks Tohru if she likes Kyo, and she says yes, but because he represents the Zodiac cat and she has always been a fan of the Zodiac cat, that relieves Kagura and allows her to help her cook. When the food is almost ready, Tohru goes up to the roof to look for Kyo. He tells her that he doesn't want to go down because Kagura only talks about marriage, but Tohru says that every girl's dream is to get married, just as he dreams of beating Yuki. Then, Kyo passionately talks about his sensei and his martial arts. That makes Tohru happy because she has never seen him smile like that and gets him to go down to eat. The next day, Kagura leaves happy because she was able to sleep in the same house as Kyo, but she accidentally bumps into the boy that delivers the newspapers, and Yuki manages to cover her before the other boy sees her. It turns out that Kagura is the spirit of the boar, and Tohru lifts her up in her arms, totally in love with her cuteness, and says that she wants to be like her, a person who doesn't stop until she gets what she wants and knows everything about the boy she likes. So the next day, Tohru decides to find out more about martial arts and vegetable gardening to deepen her friendship with Kyo and Yuki, but suddenly, she receives a call from her grandfather. The next day, Tohru tells the boys that the remodeling of her grandfather's house is almost finished and she can live with him again. The boys get a little sad but try not to show it. Tohru remembers that her mom once told her that she can be selfish once in a while. She also remembers how when she was a child, the other children never choose her to play fruits basket since they gave her the name of rice ball, and the rice ball does not play with the other fruits. And now she feels that the same thing happens. She felt that she could be part of the Soma family, but once again, she's pushed away of fruits because she's a rice ball. Before going to her aunt's house, Tohru leaves them breakfast prepared and several goodbye notes, since she will see the boys at school anyway. At her grandfather's house, her aunt tells Tohru that she sent a private detective to investigate her and discover that she was living in a house with 3 men. Tohru can't believe that she was investigated, and her aunt says that her son wants to be a police officer and they can't have criminals in the family. And she heard that Tohru's mother was violent in her youth, and as the saying goes, like mother, like daughter. Tohru's cousin mockingly asks her if she is the girlfriend of one of the men in the Soma house, and if they did something to her, he receives a slap from their grandfather. The old man apologizes to Tohru and says that although they are his family, they are unpleasant people, and tells her that he can put up with them, but she does not have to sacrifice herself. If she wants to be somewhere else, she can do so, since her father would have wanted her to spread her wings. At that moment, Tohru starts to cry because she feels selfish for wanting to leave her grandfather after he took her into his house when no one else in her family wanted to take care of her. He tells her she can do whatever she wants, but her tears continue to fall until Yuki appears out of nowhere and asks her to come home. It turns out that Kyo was very angry with Tohru's family, since they first left her homeless and now they summon her as if nothing had happened without asking her if she wanted to move again. Yuki says that this is normal, but Kyo doesn't think that way. He is angry and worried about Tohru. Then Yuki takes the note where Tohru left her address and goes in search of her, Kaya realizes where he is going and decides to follow him. Finally, the two of them find Tohru's grandfather's house. They heard everything that Tohru's aunt and cousin told her, and they are ready to get her out of there, but first they want to hear Tohru's decision. And when they heard that Tohru wants to return home, Yuki quickly enters and asks her to return home. Kyo is not far behind and also enters the house and takes Tohru out of there, while Yuki stays to face Tohru's family and collects her things. Outside, Kyo scolds Tohru for writing the address hard since he had to team up with Yuki to find the house, and also scolds her for leaving even though she wanted to stay, and advises her that sometimes it's okay to be selfish. That makes Tohru cry because he reminds her of the advice her mom gave her and says that she wants to return home with them. Then Kyo takes her hand and takes her home, but Yuki is not far behind and quickly reaches them and takes Tohru's other hand, and she feels that the rice ball has finally been chosen to be in the fruits basket. When they arrive at the Soma house, Shigure congratulates them for rescuing Tohru and tells her that the boys were very sad about her departure, although they deny it and start fighting again, while Tohru is happy to be part of the family again. Days later, the culture festival begins, and the rice ball stand is a success thanks to Tohru's exquisite recipe and Yuki, who was forced to wear a dress because his face is very feminine. Tohru thinks he looks cute in a dress, and Kyo laughs because Yuki always had complexes about having such a feminine face. Suddenly, the foreign boy that Tohru met days ago enters the classroom and hugs Yuki. He is Momiji Soma, and he does not come alone. He is accompanied by Hattori Soma. They are related to Yuki and Kyo, and Tohru is excited at the perspective of knowing more Zodiacs. Hattori begins to listen to Yuki's chest with a stethoscope and scolds him for not going to the monthly checkup, revealing that he has had lung problems since childhood. After that, Hattori stares at Tohru and Yuki gets defensive, but the tense moment is interrupted by Momoji's antics, so Tohru and Kyo take him somewhere else, making Tohru's friends suspicious about her closeness to the Soma boys. Elsewhere, Momiji tells Tohru that they met that day because the building where she works belongs to his father. He is the CEO. Plus, he knows that she knows about the family's secret, so he hugs her to show her his rabbit Zodiac spirit. Yuki notices that Momiji has transformed and distracts everyone by acting cute, while Tohru and Kyo take the rabbit to the roof. Momiji is harshly scolded by Kyo and Yuki, but Hattori is calm and takes a photo of them as a souvenir of the festival to show Akito. After that, Yuki complains about his dress and tells Tohru that she would look beautiful in the outfit, and she blushes. Before returning to the festival, he warns her not to be alone with Hattori because he is in charge of erasing the memories of those who discover the secret. They are seen by Hana and Yotani, and they question Tohru, and she decides to tell them the whole truth. So her friends invite themselves to the Soma house to verify that the place is worthy of Tohru. At night, Hana and Yotami realize that Tohru fits well in the Soma house and feel guilty for not having helped Tohru when she needed it the most, but Kyo says that Tohru is not a friend who asks for things, so it is not their blame. After that, Shigure leaves the house and Tohru proposes playing cards, while Shigure goes to the Soma estate and tells Akito that Tohru fits well with Kyo and Yuki. Meanwhile, the girls are preparing to sleep, and Hana and Yotami notice that Tohru still has the old cap. She tells them that she keeps it as a memento because years ago, she got lost and a boy wearing that cap helped her get back home. She never saw his face, but the boy left his cap to her. Tohru thinks that the boy could be her first love. Hana and Yotami lament because since she was a child, Tohru has had a hard life, but Tohru assures them that she is happy with what she has been given because she had a loving mom. She has friends who love her and 2 boys who take care of her, and her friends understand that she fits in well with the Soma boys. The next day, Yuki and Kyo fight as always, and Hana says that they look like a cat and a rat, which makes them nervous, and before leaving, Hana and Yotami approve that Tohru lives with them because she fits in that house, and they ask the boys to take care of her. After that, Tohru receives a call from Hattori, who wants her to go to Soma estate to talk about something and tells her that maybe she will meet Akito. The next day, Tohru tells the Soma boys that she's going to visit a friend, but she's going to the Soma estate and is greeted by Momiji, who takes her to Hattori's office. She is surprised to see a photograph of a woman on his desk, since he seems like a strange and angry man all the time. Momiji brings them tea, and Hattori tells her that he is the Soma family's doctor, but half the job is taking care of Akito, since he is the sickest of all. Momiji tells her about the family organization. There are more than 150 family members living in the Soma estate, but only the 12 Zodiacs live inside, and behind the wall the others live. Kyo used to live outside the wall. For Hattori, it is apparent that a foreign girl is allowed to know the family's secret, since Akito has always been strict, but he has not ordered him to erase her memory yet. He thinks that Akito is using her and advises her to distance herself from the Soma family. Suddenly, someone rings the doorbell at Hattori's house, and he leaves, and Momiji tells her Hattori's sad story. It turns out that the woman in the photo is Kana. Hattori's ex-fiancée. They were engaged, but Akito got so angry that he hurt Hattori. He didn't get angry with Akito, but Kana blamed herself for what happened and her mental health deteriorated, so Hattori erased all her memories of him and she doesn't even know that they were once in love. Tohru cries for Hattori and says that she doesn't mind being used by Akito because she is happy to have met the Zodiac. This is heard by Hattori and Shigure, who came to check how the New Year's prep is going, since it is like a ritual for them. After that, Hattori apologizes for seeming rude and gives the festival photo camera to Tohru, and she does nothing but wonder what Zodiac spirit he is. Hattori offers to walk Tohru to the estate gates, but she slips and falls on Hattori, and he turns into a seahorse. She panics because she doesn't know if he needs fresh or salt water, so she takes him in her arms and runs. That brings back memories for Hattori of how he met Kana 2 years ago. She started working as his secretary and he felt like the snow he was trapped in started to melt. She was like spring to him, even when she discovered that he was a seahorse. She did not reject him and they lived their love for the short time they could, because when they went to talk to Akito so that he would allow them to marry. Akito went crazy saying that she couldn't lift the curse, and in the fight, Hattori was and Kana took the blame. Akito said that her mental illness was part of the curse and Hattori made the painful decision to erase her memory, asking God for her to find happiness with someone else. When Hattori wakes up, he and immediately puts on his clothes and feels embarrassed that Tohru has seen his Zodiac form, since he has complexes about his cuteness. While Tohru goes to look for his shoes, he sees Kana and her friends walking and hears that Kana is getting married. After 2 years, she has found happiness again, and that makes him happy and melancholy. When Tohru arrives with his shoes, she tells him that after the snow always comes spring, and that comforts him a little. They finally arrive at the gates of the estate, and Tohru thinks she sees Akito in a car, and she asks Shigure about the curse. He tells her that it is something he can't tell her yet. When they get home, they find Kyo and Yuki sleeping as they got tired of waiting for them. The new year is approaching and Tohru's friends are worried about her because she will spend the holiday alone at home. Since the Soma boys will go to the Soma estate and her family is going to Hawaii, they offer their houses for her to go to, but Tohru says they should celebrate New Year's with their families. At home, Tohru tells the boys that she will spend New Year's there. That makes Yuki and Kyo want to stay with her. But she says that the New Year's Zodiac banquet is important. Besides, they haven't seen their parents in a long time and surely they miss them a lot. That convinces them to go because Tohru is right. On New Year's Day, Tohru sends them off with a smile, but on the way, Yuki and Kyo keep worrying about Tohru and the dangers of leaving her alone. They are so worried that Shigure makes fun of them. Then they run into Hana, who tells them that this is Tohru's first New Year without her mother, and she will surely be sad being alone. That surprises Yuki and Kyo, and the two run back home blaming themselves for not realizing that Tohru would feel sad being alone, and Hana was right. They find her crying in front of the photo of her mom. They will spend the new year with her and are glad that they did not make the mistake of leaving her alone. Meanwhile, Shigure arrives at the Soma estate, and some find it funny that Yuki and Kyo have skipped the banquet, and Shigure ironically thinks that Akiya reads what he sows. Tohru makes New Year's noodles, and when the phone rings, Kyo and Yuki get scared because they are afraid that Akito will call to scold Tohru. But it's Yoteni. She is worried, and Tohru assures her that she is fine. After that, the boys can't stop thinking about the banquet at the Soma estate, but they don't regret being with Tohru. When it is about to dawn, the three go up to the roof and make a New Year's wish. Tohru wants to be with them, and Yuki and Kyo agree with her wish, but Kyo adds one more. He wants to beat Yuki this year. The winter break is over and classes are going to start again, although the cold does not lessen and Yuki feels that he is going to catch a cold, and Tohru suggests skipping classes tomorrow because there will be a running competition. This is heard by Kyo, who begins to burn excited at the mention of a competition, and tells Yuki not to be a coward and not skip school. Shigure suggests that he take it easy because they transform when they are very weak. The next day, the girls' race starts first, and Tohru sees someone with white hair in the grass and thinks it's an old man who slipped, so she gets out of the race to help him. He's Tohru Soma, and he is there to set a trap for Kyo because he wants to talk to him. The four of them go to talk under a bridge, and Haru challenges Kyo to a fight since they both train martial arts. Kyo refuses at first, but Haru changes his personality to Dark Haru, an annoying, quarrelsome, and insistent boy when it comes to fight. The fight begins, and it is clear that Kyo is the stronger of the two. Unfortunately, the fight is stopped because Yuki faints. Then Haru hugs Tohru and turns into an ox to carry Yuki to his house. Shigure recommends that Yuki stay in bed, and Tohru refuses to go back to school because she wants to take care of his sick Yuki, and Shigure says that he will go to the school to pick up their things. After that, Haru calls Hattori to come see Yuki, and Kyo proposes to continue their fight, but he is no longer Dark Haru, so he rejects him because he recognizes that he is the stronger of the two, and how Yuki seems out of combat. Kyo decides to go back to school. Alone, Haru tells Tohru that Kyo and Yuki seem to get along better, and this surprises Tohru since they argue all day. Then Haru tells Tohru that when he was a child, his first love was Yuki. But before that, he resented him because according to old Zodiac folktale, the rat used the ox in the Zodiac race and everyone treated Haru like if he were a fool like the ox in the story. He resented him so much that he would get stressed and let out his anger in his other personality, Dark Haru, until he decided to train martial arts to let that stress go. But one day he came face to face with Yuki and yelled at him. He hated him because everyone thought he was an idiot, but Yuki asked him if he really was an idiot, and Haru realized that wasn't true, and he had been unfair to Yuki all that time. Tohru finds that a charming story, and Haru tells her that thanks to her, Yuki smiles more and asks her to call him by his first name. But when Tohru does it, Yuki blushes so much that he turns into a rat. Meanwhile, at school, Shigure and Kyo stay playing cards all day with Hana, which gave them a cold as well. Weeks later, it's almost Valentine's and Yotami and Hana open Yuki's locker and are surprised to see a single Valentine's chocolate, and Hana says that surely all the girls were throwing others' chocolate in the trash, and she is right since the trash can is overflowing with chocolates. Kyo also receives chocolates because he is popular, so he just realizes that Valentine's Day is tomorrow and tries to run away because he is afraid of what Kagura is planning, although Professor Shiraki stops him from fleeing. At the school gates, Kagura waits for Kyo and tries to run away, but she easily catches him and they all return home. It turns out that Kagura wants to go on a date with Kyo, but he flatly refuses to spend time with her, so she cries but he refuses again. Finally, Kagura proposes a double date, the two of them, Yuki and Tohru. Yuki and Kyo flatly refuse, but Tohru is excited by the idea because she has never gone on a date, so the boys accept for Tohru's sake. Shigure says that it is not his duty to hate him, and it seems that he is afraid of knowing him, which brings back painful memories for Kyo, and he flees into the forest and Tohru goes after him. She finds him crouching and seems to want to protect himself from something and tells him that he can continue hating Yuki if that's what he needs. He continues in silence and she realizes that his heart is very fragile, just like Yuki, so she remains silent next to him, hoping that her presence will comfort him. The next day, before going to her date, Tohru gives the chocolates she made to Shigure and asks him to give them to the other Zodiacs. On the double date, Kagura doesn't stop hugging Kyo, even though he rejects her, and Tohru is worried about Shigure, since he always smiles and you never know what he is thinking. Meanwhile, Shigure goes to the Soma estate and gives the chocolates to Hattori, telling him that they are from Tohru. Shigure tells him that she is like a tranquilizer for Kyo and Yuki, but Hattori criticizes him and Akito for using Tohru as a pawn to achieve a goal. Then, Shigure tells him to remember the pain he and Aya went through. He is willing to maintain that feeling and doesn't mind hurting someone to get what he wants. Hattori doesn't agree with him, but he won't object and warns him to be prepared to lose a tooth when she finds out because Yuki, Kyo, and Tohru's friends won't let him hurt Tohru. Upon returning home, the girls can't stop commenting on the movie they saw while the boys are relieved that everything is over. Outside the house is Shigure's editor, who urges him to finish his novel. At the end of the day, Tohru tells Shigure that she will give him his Valentine's Day chocolates, and he feels a little guilty. The next day, the students are happy to have finished the midterms exams. The happiest is Tohru because she did well thanks to Yuki, who was her tutor. Kyo also did well, but not Hana, since her ability to read the aura and waves of others does not help her to be smarter. After that, she goes to work at her part-time job at Momiji's dad's building, and he tells her that he's going to Shigure's house because he wants to give them a gift. It turns out that he wants to invite everyone to the hot springs, but Tohru tears up a little because it will be the first time she will go to the hot springs without her mom, but Momiji tells her that her mom would want her to be happy and Tohru agrees to go. Shigure and Yuki also agrees to go, although Kyo shows resistance. Alone, Momiji tells them the story they read at school is about an idiotic traveler who was constantly tricked by people. If someone asked her for food or money, she gave it to them. She even went without clothes because they asked her. In the end, while she was traveling through the forests, some demons convinced her to let herself be eaten, and she let them. The last demon ate the traveler's eye, and as a gift gave her a paper that said idiot, but the traveler cried of joy because it was the first time someone gave her a gift. Momiji says that the story reminds her of Tohru. She always gives without asking for anything in return, and Kyo decides to go to the hot springs. The next day, Kyo tells her that his gift for the white day will be to go to the hot springs even though he doesn't want to spend time with Yuki, and she tears up with joy. They arrive at the hot springs and are greeted by the owner, a sickly-looking but very kind woman. The inn belongs to the Somas, so she's in charge. The owner of the inn shows them their rooms and Kyo complains because he shares a room with Yuki, but the woman takes it as if he wants to share a room with Tohru and scolds him for being although the real dude is Momiji, who wants to bathe with Tohru, so he and Yuki take him to the male hot springs. Meanwhile, Tohru goes to the female hot spring with her mom's photo in a plastic bag, and the owner of the inn also goes into the hot spring and tells Tohru that she was scared that someone outside of the Soma family would know about the secret of the Zodiac. But upon meeting her, she is happy to know that she is kind and wants her to meet her son one day. He is also a Zodiac, the monkey. After that, everyone plays ping pong, but Tohru is very bad at playing and Yuki goes outside to laugh and she follows him. He says that he didn't want to laugh in front of Kyo and takes the opportunity to give her his White Day gift, a hair bow, and he gives it to her so chivalrously that she thinks he is a kind prince. Kyo is a cool prince and Momiji is a cute prince. The next day, Momiji tells Tohru that in April he and Haru will start going to their high school, and Tohru can't believe it because they thought he was a middle school student. But Kyo explains that Momiji and Haru are only a year younger than them, and Tohru is left speechless. Spring has arrived. Tohru, Kyo, and Yuki are officially second-year high school students. Tohru wants to go greet Haru and Momiji since today is their first day in high school. Even Shigure came to see them because he loves them as if they were his little brothers. Kyo is not interested in going, but Tohru convinces him, and Hana and Yutani think that it is increasingly difficult for Kyo to say no to Tohru. While Kyo searches the other Soma's classroom, he overhears some first-year boys talking disrespectfully about Tohru because she is distracted, so he stands next to Tohru as her human shield and glares at the other guys. Then Momiji and Haru appear, and Kyo scolds them because Momiji is wearing a girl's uniform and Haru is wearing a lot of ornaments and jewelry that makes him look like a bad boy. Suddenly, the president of the student council, Taiki, arrives and scolds them for breaking the rules, especially Haru because he has white hair and does not believe that it is his real hair color. Then he harshly scolds Momiji for wearing a female uniform, and Haru transforms into Dark Haru and convinces Taiki to allow Momiji to dress however he wants. Taiki does not give up and says that there is still the problem with his white hair, and Dark Haru takes him to the bathroom and shows him irrefutable proof that his white hair is natural, so Taiki leaves. Tohru wonders how Dark Haru did to prove that his white hair is natural, and Dark Haru maliciously tells her that he will show her and earns a double punch from Kyo and Yuki and becomes simple Haru again. After that, Momiji tells Tohru that he wants to talk to the boys alone, and she goes to their classroom. Momiji tells the boys that Akito is at school and Yuki wants to avoid seeing him. But unfortunately, Tohru meets Akito and starts to shake when greeting him, since he is the culprit of what happened to Hattori. But when he starts to talk, she notices that he is calm and not as she imagined. Suddenly, Yuki arrives and angrily asks Akito what he did to Tohru, and he maliciously says that he was just greeting her and approaches Yuki to warn him that he is being very disobedient. And that makes Yuki tremble. He is so scared that Tohru separates Akito from Yuki and tells him that they should return to their classroom. Akito looks at Tohru with hostility and says goodbye. Tohru does not understand why he looked at her that way, but the important thing is to erase the terror from Yuki's gaze at this moment, so she invites him to play with her friends after classes. Meanwhile, Shigure goes to Hattori's house and tells him about Akito and Tohru's meeting. According to Akito, Tohru is an ugly and stupid girl, and does not represent any problem since Yuki is still afraid of him and is destined to return to his side. Shigure thinks that this is logical since Akito locked Yuki in a dark room, psychologically him for a long time until Yuki asked him to help him escape. That trauma is very difficult to forget. And although Tohru is not a very brilliant girl, her kindness and big heart make anyone love her. Days later, while Tohru and Yuki are harvesting some vegetables, she happily thinks that Yuki seems more relaxed. On the way home, she sees clothes lying on the ground and quickly thinks that there is a Zodiac near, and she is right. A white snake crawls inside her clothes and she screams in fear. Yuki runs to her and grabs the white snake and takes it home angrily and asks Shigure to cook the snake. Turns out the snake is a Zodiac. He is Ayam Soma, Yuki's older brother, and Shigure explains to Tohru that Ayam, Hattori, and him are the same age, so the three of them are best friends because they went to school together. Ayam is very different from Yuki, since he is more of a comedian and a natural flirt. He apologizes to Tohru for crawling through her clothes, since the cold weakens him a lot, and he transforms into a snake to seek heat in human bodies. He tells her that he wanted to meet the princess who lives captive with the Somas, which only makes Yuki angry, so Ayam takes Tohru out to eat. While ordering food, Ayam tells Tohru that he and Yuki are not close because he is 10 years older than him. And when he was born, Yuki was quarantined, so they barely saw each other when they were children. But as they grew up, the distance between them grew due to bad decisions he made, so when he found out that Akito and Yuki saw each other, he came to check on his brother's well-being and take care of him. But Yuki seems fine, so that he's not necessary. But Tohru tells him that the gap between them can close because according to her mom, even if you are an adult, you can still understand the feelings you had in the past. She believes that it is not too late and they just need to meet in the middle, and Ayame is left speechless upon hearing it and is filled with hope. When they return home, Yuki feels a little bad for speaking rudely to his brother and says that it is difficult for him, and that excites Ayame and tells him that they can talk whenever he wants. The problem is that on the way home, Ayame got cold again and turned into a snake to be warm in Tohru's body, so Yuki gets angry again. The next day at school, Haru notices that Yuki is in a bad mood because of his brother and decides to take care of the matter. After school, Tohru, Kyo, and Yuki return home and Ayame begins to tell them school anecdotes, like the time he managed to pretend to be royalty, so they would allow him to have long hair in middle school, how he managed to win the elections and become student council president, or the time he stopped students from being expelled because they went to the pleasure district on a school trip. Ayame thinks that with those stories he will be able to get closer to his brother, but Yuki thinks that his brother is hopeless. Suddenly, Hattori arrives and takes Ayame away, and he obeys him without hesitation because he respects Hattori a lot. Ayame laments that he couldn't close the distance between him and his brother, but Hattori says that Yuki is young and he should be patient. That makes Ayame smile and says that he and Tohru are the same. They both know what to say to make him feel better. Meanwhile, at home, Yuki tells Tohru that his brother is capable of treating well to people who don't treat him well, and Tohru thinks that the distance between them may one day close. The next day, Yuki thanks Haru for worrying about him, since he was the one who called Hattori to take Ayame out. May 1st is approaching. It is the first anniversary of Tohru's mom's. Yuki offers to go with her and her friends to pay respects to her grave, but Kyo seems taciturn and remains silent. Tohru's friends think that Tohru's mom would love to talk to Kyo, since their personality is the same. Suddenly, Momiji appears running around and Tohru worries and laughs for him. This touches Hana and Yotani, since Tohru has been through a lot and they are glad that she can smile now. At night, while Tohru works, Momiji helps her and she asks him which of his parents is German. He shows her a photo of a beautiful woman, and not only that, Momiji has a little sister named Momo, and he loves her very much. Suddenly, the woman in the photo appears and treats Momiji as if he weren't her son, and when she and Momo leave, Momiji tells her that his mother doesn't remember him because they erase her memory. It turns out that children possessed by Zodiac spirits are born 2 months early, and mothers have 2 reactions. They are overprotective of their babies, or they reject them, and Momoji's mother rejected him when he was born. Her mother went crazy just like Kana, and Momoji's father heard that maybe she would be saved if her memory was erased, and he asked Momiji, promising that he would love him so much that he would not lack his mommy's love. So Momiji at his young age decided to save his mother and accepted that her memory of him be erased. Soon his mother recovered and continued living as if nothing had happened. Tohru starts to cry since Momiji decided to take care of his mom and always watches her from afar, being careful that she doesn't see him. Momiji says that he doesn't want to forget any memories. He wants to be able to grow and not be defeated by memories that hurt him, since he didn't want his mother to forget him. But that would have been selfish. Then Tohru hugs him crying and agrees with him. Memories should not be forgotten. They must be treasured, and they both cry together, although Momiji does so in his rabbit form. The next day, Tohru is accompanied by her 4 friends to her mother's grave, and they realize that Tohru's grandfather was already there because the grave is clean and her mother Kyoko's favorite food was placed as an offering. While Tohru and the others make flower arrangements for the grave, Kyo walks away from them and asks Hana if she can hear the ghosts, and she says that her powers are not spiritual. She can read the waves of humans as if they were thought, and at this moment Kyo's waves scream regret at being at Kyoko's grave. This surprises Kyo, but they are interrupted by Tohru, who takes the 2 of them to sit down to eat a picnic because Kyoko would have wanted it that way. After that, Tohru and the boys leave, and Yotani says that the 3 of them seem to be getting along better and thinks that Kyo might confess his feelings to Tohru one day, but Hana says that the waves of the 2 Soma boys exude chaos, confusion, and dark thoughts, and as long as they continue like this, they will not be able to have a romantic relationship, and Yorami says that love blooms when one least expects it. In the afternoon, Tohru falls asleep after drinking tea, and Kyo sits next to her and whispers in her ear that he is sorry, while Yuki sees the cap that is in Tohru's room and recognizes it. The next day, Tohru and the Somas are going to spend the weekend in a cabin in the forest. Hattori goes too, although Tohru feels a little uncomfortable because since they returned from her mother's grave, Kyo and Yuki seem upset. Then Shigure suggests that they take Tohru on a walk by the lake, but the Ikward's feelings continue, and Tohru concludes that they are angry with her. So she starts to apologize, although they don't understand why she does it, and for being so clumsy. Tohru falls down the hill and the 2 boys try to reach her. Meanwhile, at the cabin, Shigure calls his editor to tell her that he is taking the day off and gives one of his favorite books to Hattori to relax, and he realizes that he is trying to distract him from Kana's wedding. On the cliff, Tohru is fine, but Kyo and Yuki are turned into a cat and a rat because they fell on top of her. So they start arguing about who is to blame for Tohru falling, and that makes her laugh with relief, and they explain to her that they are not angry with her. They just didn't feel good, but now seeing her laugh, they feel better. They return to the house to change clothes and are surprised to see Hattori taking a nap. But the surprise does not end there. IAM has secretly come to support Hattori, but says that he wants to be close to his beloved little brother and Yuki, just wants to keep him away. All this ruckus wakes up Hattori, who immediately calms IAM and Tohru, and the boys go to the lake as they had planned earlier. While Kyo and Yuki do not stop arguing at the lake, IAM gives a photo of Kana's wedding to Hattori. He did not go to the wedding. The photo was given to him by Mayu Shiraki, an acquaintance of the three. Hattori didn't want to go to the wedding because if Kana sees him, maybe she might remember him, and that's a dangerous thing. IAM doesn't agree with Hattori giving up so easily, but Hattori knows that his thing with Kana ended forever, and he just wants her to be happy. For IAM, the whole situation is unfair. Kana forgot him and is happy now. But Hattori was left behind with the painful memories and thinks that Hattori is too kind. And since he knows that he can't do anything, he says that he wants Hattori to be 200 times happier than Kana. That makes Hattori smile and tells him that he should be like that with Yuki. So when the three young ones return from their walk at the lake, IAM tells Yuki that from now on, he has to obey him because he is the older brother. That makes Shigure and Hattori laugh because he didn't understand the advice. Meanwhile, in high school, Professor Mayu Shiraki treasures her best friend Kana's wedding photo with her. Weeks later, the heat is on and it's almost summer, so the students start using the school pool, but Tohru is still wearing her school swimsuit and Hana and Yotami agree to give her friend a new one. Even the Soma's boys want to give something to Tohru, but Yotani forces them to go choose a swimsuit for Tohru. They feel very embarrassed, so they refuse to give their opinion, so Yotani forces them to choose the color. But that makes them fight because they can't decide, so Hana decides to choose a pink one for Tohru. In the end, they give their gift to Tohru and she tears up with joy. After that, the three of them go to eat and the girls tell the boys how they met in middle school. Hana was transferred from another school because she was a problematic girl and Yotani used to belong to a gang of tough girls. She was wild as an unfit lion. Although she only caused trouble, she admired a woman who was a gang leader, the Crimson Butterfly Kyoko, Tohru's mom. Meanwhile, some gang's members see her and can't believe that she is so calm now, and even more, that she is friends with two such handsome boys. At the other table, Yotani continues telling them about how she was an admirer of Kyoko, until one day the leader of her gang told her that Kyoko had a daughter who was Yotani's age and went to the same school. And when Yotani met Tohru, she couldn't believe that her heroine had such a strange daughter, and the worst thing was when she met her idol, Kyoko was no longer a gang member. She was a doting mom, and all of Yotani's admiration went to dust. Kyoko was such a loving mother and radiated light with a smile, and Yotani only knew darkness since her mother abandoned her and her father. As time went by, the anger that Yotani felt towards her former heroine transformed into longing because she felt that she no longer belonged to that world. Days later, Yotani runs into Tohru while fleeing from another gang, and Tohru hides her in her house without hesitation. Although she was very scared, she gave her the first aid kit, and Yotani got angry because it was very cute. And then she got angrier when Tohru started cooking, since it made her feel at home. Then Tohru sat next to her while Yotani cried because she found out that Tohru was also missing a parent. The two fell asleep until Kyoko came back and saw like this. After that, the story becomes a little embarrassing, so she prefers not to tell it. Suddenly, the little gang members challenge Yotani, but she ignores them. When they finish eating, the little gang members follow them and keep challenging Yotani to a fight while she remembers how the story continued. It turns out that after that day, Yotani started spending more time at Tohru's house, and no matter how many times she knocked on the door, Kyoko always greeted her with a smile and listened to her problems. Over time, Tohru and Yotami became friends, but the teachers and other students frowned upon that friendship because they thought that Yotami was a bad influence on Tohru. Yotami didn't care that they spoke badly of her, but she didn't like people to talk bad about Tohru, so one night she decided to leave her. So the other members beat her up. Luckily for Yotami, an older member of her gang ran to tell Kyoko she arrived, scared the girls, and fled with Yotani on her back. On the way home, Kyoko gave a lot of motherly advice to Yotne, while she cried that she wanted to be a good best friend to Tohru. After that, they met Hana, and the three became inseparable best friends, and although Kyoko left this world, her teachings and advice live on in Yotani. Then, Yotani awakens from the memories and advises the little members to stop misbehaving and find another way to show off their strength. And if they want someone to scold them, they can find her. At the end of the day, Yotani returns to the apartment and cooks dinner while scolding her dad for drinking so much soda, since after all, they have both been able to move forward. Days later, Tohru and Yuki go out shopping, but it rains so much that they have to wait for it to stop. Meanwhile, They talk about the final exams approaching, and before that, there are the elections for the new president of the student council, and Teike wants Yuki be his successor, but he is not interested. Suddenly, they see Haru walking in the rain with a bundle in his arms, and he shows them a little tiger. It's Shigure Soma. Tohru is excited to meet another Zodiac and wants to pet her fur, but Kisa bites her. At home, Haru heals Tohru's hand and explains that Kisa doesn't speak because at school she suffers from bullying, and today Kisa ran away from home and Haru was tasked with looking for her. That angers Kisa, and she bites him and goes to the garden. Yuki notices that Haru is very worried about Kisa, and he says that Kisa reminds him of Yuki. When he didn't want to talk either, the memories are painful for Yuki, so he gets angry and leaves. In the garden, Tohru tries to endure Kisa's biting, and at that moment, Kisa's mother arrives with a look of disappointment, saying that she can't take it anymore and questions her daughter why she didn't tell her about the bullying, and Tohru says that it is difficult to tell about bullying. When she was a child, she did not tell her mother about the bullying she suffered because she was ashamed. But after telling her, they both cried with relief, and she thinks that Kisa feels that way. That surprises Kisa's mother, and the little girl transforms into her human form again and crying hugs Tohru. After that, Shigure suggests that Kisa stay at his house for a few days so her mother can also rest a little from this whole situation. Yuki also heard Tohru's words and felt relieved, so he asks her to lend him her shoulder to rest for a while, as does Kisa. After 3 days, Kisa still hasn't spoken a word, but she follows Tohru everywhere, and she loves that because she thinks she is very cute. At school, Soma's boys and Tohru talk about Kisa, and Tohru tells them that all is not lost with Kisa's mom because she calls at night to find out about her daughter. Then Momiji tells them that Kisa is school because of her look, hair, and voice, something very normal for humans possessed by Zodiac spirits, since most are born with unusual hair colors. Also, her classmates made fun of her every time Kisa said something, so she stopped talking out of embarrassment. In the afternoon, Haru goes to visit Kisa because her homeroom teacher sent her a letter where she asks her to try harder and advises her to love herself so she can make friends. Haru and Yuki are upset that the homeroom teacher is so insensitive to a small and fragile girl like Kisa, so Yuki tells her that he didn't talk before either and life wasn't easy. But one day, he found someone who accepted him as he is, and now it's easier, and he asks Kisa to try one more time. And if it's too much for her, she can come home and spend time with Tohru. That will calm her heart. Then Kisa starts to cry because she wants to try one more time, and together, they go to wait for Tohru outside her job. When Tohru hears Kisa's voice for the first time, she hugs her crying. The next day, Tohru, Haru, and Momiji accompany Kisa to school to cheer her up, while Yuki goes to talk to Taki to tell him that he agrees to be his successor as president of the student council, since the only way to move forward is trying one more time. Days later, Shigure continues hiding from his editor Mitsuru and lies to her that he is in an octopus restaurant, and the editor runs out and collides with a beautiful girl. The two apologize profusely, and Mitsuru continues on her way to the restaurant. Everything is seen by Tohru, who the girl's attitude reminds her of the owner of the inn, so she concludes that she is the monkey of the Zodiac. And she was right, the monkey of the Zodiac is Shigure Soma. Ritsu wanted to meet Tohru because most of the Zodiacs know her, but Ritsu's personality is very shy and apologizes for everything. Shigure says that she will soon be an adult and has to toughen up, so Ritsu apologizes once again and says that her dream is to be like I am, a man who overflows with confidence, but Shigure says that it is impossible, but they can try. The first test is for Ritsu to talk to Yuki and Kyo without apologizing, but Ritsu fails miserably because it is very difficult to broach conversation topics with them without them getting angry. Ritsu gives up easily and tries to run away, so Tohru tries to stop the escape, but she collides with Ritsu and transforms, and Tohru realizes that Ritsu is a boy. It turns out that Ritsu feels calmer wearing women's clothes since he was a child, and Tohru praises him by saying that he looks beautiful. After that, Mitsuru comes running home, and Shigure lies to Ritsu saying that she is his and gives him the task to get rid of her. But when Mitsuru sees her in the house, she thinks that his boss was playing with a girl instead of writing, but Ritsu stops her and lets her in. It turns out that Shigure had already finished the manuscript and was only teasing Mitsuru while the editor reads the precious manuscript. Tohru brings the coffee, and Ritsu's clumsiness acts and throws all the coffee in the manuscript, making Mitsuru faint. For Ritsu, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. She can't take it anymore and gives up, although the others assure Hai that they are not angry with him. And he explains that he has always been clumsy, and because of him, his parents always had to apologize on his behalf, and as he grew up, he realized that his birth was a mistake because he has no purpose in life. Then Tohru goes up to the roof and tells him that humans are not born with a goal. Sometimes it takes a while to find it. Sometimes it is not a goal, but a dream, a job, or being someone's heart. So she asks him to wait a little longer. She is sure that you will soon find a goal or perhaps a person. Ritsu is moved by her words and decides to come down from the roof. Later, Mitsuru wakes up and Shigure tells her that he is rewriting a manuscript and needs octopus snacks to continue writing. So Mitsuru and Ritsu go to the octopus stall to buy some, and she tells him that she is terrible at her job and sometimes she thinks she has no goal in life. Then Ritsu says to her the same words that Tohru said to him, and Mitsuru is moved, and they both decide to be friends, and without realizing it, something began to blossom in their heart. Days later, Kisa goes to Shigure's house to spend time with Tohru while they watch some cartoons with Yuki, and even though Kisa is very shy, she makes an effort to talk. Meanwhile, a little boy called Hiro goes to Kisa's house and her mom tells him that she went to see Tohru, so Hiro decides to go meet the famous Tohru at her job. But he is very rude to her, although Tohru is just being friendly as always, and to top it all off, Hiro grabs Toru's pocketbook and takes it with him. Tohru gets desperate because inside the pocketbook is the photo of her mom and she starts to cry. Luckily, this is seen by Momiji. Elsewhere, Kyoto finds Hiro and the two start fighting until Tohru arrives accompanied by Momiji and Kisa, which upsets Hiro since he is jealous of Tohru and Kisa's friendship. Hiro tells Kisa that he lent her a cartoon DVD to watch with her, but Kisa preferred to watch it with Tohru, even though he is its tsundere, and never told her that he wanted to watch the DVD with her. Kisa is moved and apologizes to Hiro for ignoring him and asks him to apologize to Tohru. But Tohru doesn't want an apology, she wants a hug to know what Zodiac Hiro is, and when she hugs him, she is delighted to see a small sheep. On the weekend, Hiro and Kisa go to watch cartoons at Shigure's house and Hiro continues to be rude to Tohru, which angers Kyo, but Shigure tells him that he is in his rebellious age just like him. After that, Shigure goes to Hatotori's house and Hiro forces Tohru to take him to the park. At Hatotori's house, he tells Shigure that last year, Hiro confessed to Akito that he is in love with Kisa. And that was the worst thing he could have done because Akito hurt Kisa so much that he felt guilty and decided to ignore her so that it wouldn't happen again. But that had more consequences, since Kisa began to be at school. Hiro feels so much guilt for what happened that he takes it out on Tohru, since he has no way to get rid of his frustration. Meanwhile, at the park, Hiro continues to be rude to Tohru, but with Kisa, he is a little gentleman willing to pay for their creeps. While they are prepared, Hiro wonders what is so special about Tohru that she manages to save Kisa, since he feels that she is inferior to him. Because he tried to do things right, informing the head of the family of his love for Kisa, but the only thing he managed was for her to get hurt, and he feels ashamed of being a child who can't do anything. Then Tohru says that he has nothing to be ashamed of, quite the opposite, because her mom always said that admitting that you are a child is a sign of maturity, and one day he will be able to become a prince who can rescue his princess, because Tohru knows that Hiro has courage in his heart. Hearing this completely changes the mood of frustration that Hiro feels, since she gave him the hope that he needed, and he swears that one day he will save Kisa. The next day, the president of Yuki's fan club, Motoko, has a nightmare in which she is cursed by Hana, so at school she tells two friends that they should investigate Hana, and they lie to Hana saying that they want to interview her about the waves, and she accepts, although everything about her is a mystery, and that's why they believe that her house must be some kind of cemetery. To their surprise, it is an ordinary house. Hana goes to make them some tea and warns them not to say their names out loud, but the girls don't pay attention and start checking Hana's room, but everything is too dark and normal, except for the fact that there is a boy dressed in black in her closet. Hana tells them that he is her little brother, Megumi. After that, everyone has tea and the girls ask Megumi if he also has the power to read waves like his sister, but he says that his power is to curse and can't to curse people just by knowing their name. This scares the girls, especially Mayo, who wants to go to her house, but the mission to find Hana's weakness is not over yet, so Mayo asks her directly to find out. Hana realizes what they really came for and says it's a very childish way of solving things. The girls get angry at her dismissiveness, so they just ask her to warn Tohru to stay away from Yuki, but Hana has no plans to do such a thing. Motoko gets angry when she hears that she takes her feelings as simple jealousy, but Megumi tells them that they are just being selfish and even gives them a lecture to stop acting like that, because otherwise so much uncontrolled love could be a burden for the person they love. This bothers the girls, so he says that he already knows everyone's name, so they leave the house terrified. Deep down, Hana understands the girls a little bit because she also feels jealous of the Soma boys sometimes. Suddenly, someone rings the doorbell and it's Yutani and Tohru, who ask for permission at her job to come check on Hana because she noticed she was strange this morning. That makes Hana's heart happy, and thanks to Megumi's words, she reconsiders and accepts that Tohru is very close to the Soma's boys now, but their friendship is just as special to Tohru. And what the girls couldn't find out is that Hana's weakness is Tohru. At night, Motoko and her friends have nightmares about Hana and her little bro cursing them, So the next morning, Hana scoffs, saying that the curse takes 3 days to take effect. In the past, Hana was a very quiet and lonely child because her ability to hear waves made it difficult for her to be around many people. And that is why her parents tried to take care of her as best as possible. But everything got worse at school, since the children tormented her by calling her a witch and her so much that she wished with all her heart that the child would. And with the force of her power, the child fainted. From that moment on, everyone began to avoid her, and she began to dress in black as penance, since only a very dark heart would wish for someone to. Although the bullying did not stop, since they always blamed her for all the small accidents that occurred around her. Her little brother Megumi asked her to tell their parents about the, but she thought she deserved it, so her little brother decided to make a prayer asking for a person to appear who is capable to cherish Hana. But the bullying did not stop, but rather increased. One afternoon, some girls tried to her to prove she was a witch, but they were discovered by a teacher, and instead of punishing the other girls, Hana was scolded. Then her parents decided to move away and transfer her to another school because they didn't want her to continue suffering. At her new school, she met Tohru and thought she was a strange girl, and when Yotani saw that Hana was going to sit down to eat alone, she invited her to eat lunch with them, and Hana thought she was even stranger. At the end of the day, Yotani and Tohru said goodbye to Hana warmly, and Hana realized that it was the first time that someone wanted to see her the next day. As time went by, the three became friends, and Hana began to think that she had found her place, but the peace did not last long because some girls in her classroom found out about her troubled past and asked her if it was true, and Hana was so afraid of losing her friends that she accidentally caused one of her classmates to get a headache. This made her feel so guilty that she ran away from the classroom, and Tohru followed her. Hana thought that she had no right to have friends because she had used her powers again and asked Tohru to stay away from her, but Yotani had also followed them and told Hana that she is the one who has to choose, and Hana started crying, saying that she wanted to stay by their side. Sometime later, Hana was finally able to control the waves to listen to what she wanted and only uses her power against annoying people. Although Hana felt that she was a bad daughter for not valuing the love of her family, and Kyoko once told her that humans always seek to be accepted by others, and she was sure that the three of them will be great best friends, and if the three of them go their separate ways, the feeling will be the same. Days later, Tohru feels very sad because she did poorly on an exam, and the worst thing is that Yuki had been her tutor, and she still couldn't pass. Yuki, Hana, and Yotani try to cheer her up, but she still has a black cloud in her head because she may not be able to fulfill her promise to her mother graduate. On the way home, Kyo tries to cheer her up too, but she faints from a fever. At home, Shigure recommends she stay in bed, and that makes her feel useless because now she can't even cook. Then Kyo cooks oatmeal for her and tells her that she can take it out on him so she can relax, and she tells him her worries. So Kyo downplays her problems, and Tohru realizes that this is Kyo's way of cheering her up and that make her happy. After that, Hattori comes to give Tohru medicine and tells her that she should get well soon because everyone is worried about her. Yuki also enters her room and gives her his notebook that will help her pass the makeup exam. Days later, Tohru passes her makeup exam and is very happy even though it is a rainy day. The one who is not having a good time is Kyo. Since his Zodiac spirit is a cat, the rain weakens him, and Tohru offers to help carry him home if he turns into a cat, but he firmly rejects her, although he smiles warmly at her. And this is seen by a man who is watching them, who is surprised to see Kyo smile. At home, there is something worse than rain waiting for Kyo, Kagura. She begins to hug him, and he begins to reject her as always, causing destruction in the house, and Shigure suggests that they go on a date so they can calm down a bit, but Kyo flatly refuses. Then Shigure asks them to go buy groceries for dinner, and Kagura agrees, and pretending it's a date drags Kyo away. Shigure complains about the new damage to the house and says that he will put the expenses on Kyo's bank account, and Tohru is surprised at how little she knows about how the Soma family is run. At the convenience store, Kagura suggests that he should stay away from Tohru because she doesn't know the truth about him. This makes him angrier, and he asks her why she is so obsessed with him. And she says that he doesn't remember, and if she tells him, he will cry, that's why it's a secret. Meanwhile, Yuki and Tohru go to harvest some vegetables in the garden and see the man who had been watching them earlier. When Kyo and Kagura return home, Kyo is surprised to see his sensei. It turns out that Kyo's sensei is Kazuma Soma. He took care of Kyo when his mother took her life for having a son who did not belong to the 12 Zodiacs, the cat. Kazuma is a father figure to Kyo, since he has cared for and trained him for many years and loves him like a father. He is the one who understands Kyo best because his grandfather was the one who previously possessed Cat's spirit. Kyo is very happy to see him but tries not to show it, so he goes to his room and Kazuma follows him. Kyo tries to punch him as a greeting, but Kazuma easily dodges it, which fills Kyo with joy, who greets him happily. Kazuma tells him that his trip is over and he will reopen the dojo. so Kyo gets excited at the thought of living with him again, but Kazuma says that the best place for him is Shigure's house because it seems that he found the comfort he was looking for. Kyo disagrees and says that he feels strange things here without realizing that it is because of Tohru. At night, Kazuma tells Shigure that he will show Tohru the whole truth, because it is better to know early if Tohru will accept Kyo's true form. Shigure is not sure it is a good idea, but Kazuma feels that he should bet everything on Tohru because he saw how Kyo smiled at her. Maybe she is the key to opening Kyo's heart. Later, Kazuma calls Kyo to the garden and says that he knows that he is trying to escape from this place because he has found someone precious to him. And that is why he is scared that she knows his true form. Kyo gets angry and denies it, and says that he doesn't have the life to think about those things because his life ended the moment he was born with the spirit of the cat, and it's all the rat's fault. Then Kazuma sighs, disappointed that Kyo continues to hide behind his hatred for Yuki, and tells him that it is time to know if Tohru will reject him when she sees his true form. Suddenly, Tohru appears behind them and Kazuma rips off Kyo's bead bracelet that rosary acted as a protective seal, and Kyo begins to transform into the true form of the Zodiac cat. Years of contempt and looks of horror flood Kyo's mind as he transforms, and he is unable to look at Tohru, so he flees into the forest, his true form being a monstrous cat that smells bad and causes fear to whoever sees it. Tohru is shocked to see him, but even though she is scared, she runs after Kyo. In the forest, she smells the stench that Kyo gives off and vomits since it is nauseating, but she doesn't care and continues looking for him. When she finds him, Kyo gets angry and hits her with one of his claws. He wants her to hate him to endure the pain of losing her. While Tohru walks away from him, he remembers all the times his mother told him she loved him, although she always made sure that he had the protective rosary on. Suddenly, Tohru takes courage and turns around and clings to one of Kyo's paws and tells him that she wants him to come home with her. Even though she is scared by his form and his voice, she wants to understand him better and doesn't plan to abandon him. Then Tohru begins to cry, telling him that she wants him to be honest with her, to tell her when he is sad or worried. She wants to live with him all the experiences that the future has in store for them, and she again begs him to come home with her. Suddenly, Kyo becomes human again and says, crying, that he just wanted his mother to love him by accepting the ugly part of him. But she only pretended that the cat's spirit didn't exist, and now he can't believe that there is someone who loves him enough to accept him in his ugly form. The two of them stop crying, and Kyo hugs Tohru tightly because he doesn't want to let her go, and unexpectedly, he transforms into the usual orange cat, since all his ugly feelings have evaporated. In the morning, Tohru returns home with Kyo, turned into a cat in her arms. Before waking up, Kyo remembers how Kazuma took care of him from a very young age and how he always caused him problems. He didn't like people thinking that he was his father because he felt that he was not worthy, and he can't help but feel hurt when he realizes that Kazuma left without saying goodbye and runs to catch up with him. Meanwhile, Tohru asks Kazuma why he didn't say goodbye to Kyo, and he says that he doesn't feel that he is the right person for Kyo, since when he started taking care of him, it was to atone for the guilt of having treated his grandfather badly when he was a child, but without realizing it, he began to love Kyo as if he were his son. And now he did a selfish act by forcing him to reveal his true form in front of her. Although fortunately, everything turned out well. Tohru disagrees with him and tells him that he was acting like a father. At that moment, Kyo arrives and tells him that he will try to improve to be worthy of being called his son. But Kazuma says that he already considers him his son. That makes Kyo so happy that he blushes, and they both accept that the father and son bond they formed is real. The next day, Kyo tells them that he will go to train 3 times a week at Kazuma's dojo, and Tohru is very happy for him. That morning, Yuki is more taciturn than normal, and Tohru gets worried and tells Haru, who had already noticed that Yuki is worried about something. So he goes to talk to him, and Yuki says that he's trying to tie down the feelings he feels so that they don't overflow. While still thinking about Kagura stepping aside and leaving early so that no one sees her after the events that took place between Kyo and Tohru. Haru tells him that Tohru is worried about him, and Yuki says that he will talk to her. Yuki tells Tohru that he has improved his social skills, but he still has a long way to go and he doesn't want her to worry, and to change the subject, he tells her that summer is getting closer to and wants to create many memories with her. He says it so romantically that Tohru blushes and almost faints, which makes Yuki laugh hysterically at his joke. At home, Shigure invited all the Somas to dinner, and Kagura agreed to go and return to her old self, trying to be close to Kyo. Momiji is the most excited about summer break, and Tohru senses that a big change is coming. Meanwhile, Hiro takes care of a girl named Rin who is battling the curse, and Shigure takes care of Akito at the Soma estate, who is very weak and curls up on his lap. He also thinks that a change is coming. Summer is approaching, and Shigure can't wait to see how things develop between Kyo and Tohru, But Kyo doesn't know what he's talking about, and Shigure is disappointed, saying that he doesn't deserve to live this summer dream. Meanwhile, Yuki won't stop teasing Kyo and leaves early for school because he has a meeting with the student council. At the same moment, Motoko goes to talk to Teki to ask him about the members of the new board. She wants to know if there is a girl, since she can't stand the idea of Yuki being around other girls, considering that he is all the time with Tohru, and she is already a threat to poor Yuki. But Teki is the same as her. He's a fan of Yuki and refuses to give her that information, so they leave disappointed, although Motoko suspects that there is a girl on the council. Outside, they see the mini-gang members greeting Mutani and can't believe that Yuki has to attend the same school, where there is a former gang member and a witch, but Hana scares them and they run away. Meanwhile, Yuki goes to greet the members of the student council of his board and meets Machi and Kakeru. She is the treasurer of the student council and Kakeru is the vice president. He has an outgoing personality that reminds him of his brother I Am, so he is speechless at the prospect of working alongside him for an entire year, and on top of everything, Kakeru tells him that his face is very feminine and leaves, saying that he is more interesting than he seems. Yuki returns to the student council room and sees that Machi has already left, and he is sorry for not being able to chat with her since she made him curious about what she was doing earlier. The next day, Motoko contacts a girl who is an expert in picking locks and asks her to open the student council room and find out if a girl will be close to Yuki. But to her surprise, Yuki was there planning his year as student president. Motoko can't believe that she is alone with Yuki, and she decides to chat with him. But she is so nervous that she just asks him what he had for breakfast today, and he answers her with a smile. Motoko delights in that smile, but she notices that he smiles more often than before thanks to Tohru, and she doesn't like that. Jealousy and envy envelop her heart, and she runs away. She hates Tohru, but she also hates herself for not wanting Yuki to be happy with another girl. Yuka chases after her and apologizes in case he said something that offended her, but she gets a little embarrassed and accepts that he looks better smiling. At home, Yuki tells Tohru about Machi and Kakeru and says that it is the first time that someone told him that he is interesting, and that made him happy. Days later, Professor Mayu tells the students that they have to write their career plan, and Tohru tells the girls that she just wants to finish school and then work to support herself. But Yutani says that she could also get married and she can choose Kyo or Yuki. They are surprised to hear that, and Yutani threatens to beat them if they think that Tohru is not enough for them. On the weekend, Tohru and Kyo go to Kazuma's dojo because he invited them to lunch, but they get a surprise when they smell burnt food because Kazuma was distracted reading Shigure's new book. Tohru offers to cook and Kyo will help her, which makes Kazuma smile because the two look good together and Kyo looks happy, something that seemed impossible last year since an aura of sadness and despair surrounded Kyo. Suddenly, Kazuma receives a call from Kyo's real father telling him that they have to talk. A saved disciple of Kazuma named Kunamitsu, he tells Tohru that Kyo used to be a scared child, which surprises Tohru and upsets Kyo. So Kunamitsu leaves saying that he doesn't want to be the third wheel. Kyo remembers that Kazuma used to tell him that fears go away when the body and mind grow, so he hopes that he can overcome the fears that grip him today. Meanwhile, Kyo's father wants to lock Kyo up as soon as possible, since humans who possess the cat spirit are locked up after finishing high school. But Kyo's father wants Kazuma to help him lock him up sooner. Kazuma refuses and tells him that he looks the same as Kyo a year ago. He has let himself be governed by his fears and anger and recommends that he follow in Kyo's footsteps. He was able to advance to a new future. Then Kyo's father scoffs, saying that it's Akito's orders, but Kazuma says that he will defend Kyo from anyone since he has been Kyo's father for many years. Meanwhile, at Kazuma's dojo, Tohru tries to convince him how fun summer is, and he remembers her that like a cat, he doesn't like the sea or swimming pools. At that moment, Kazuma arrives just in time for lunch and pats Kyo's head, saying that he will always protect him. The next day after leaving work, Momiji tells Tohru that he already has his future planned, although it may be impossible to achieve it, so Yuki explains that the Zodiacs have a lot of problems when it comes to thinking about a future. At home, Kyo is also worried about his future, and Tohru is surprised because he thought he would be in charge of Kazuma's dojo. But Kyo explains that his future is uncertain because everything is decided by Akito, and they probably won't even give him permission to have a job. He tells her that they both have an uncertain future and she doesn't understand it at first, but she starts to think that her future is also uncertain because when she finishes school like her mother wanted, she doesn't know if she could get a job. She also doesn't know if she will be able to earn money or if she will continue living in this house at Shigure's expense. So the harsh reality overwhelms her and starts to cry, and she blames Kyo for opening her eyes. He tries to calm her down and even allows her to pull on his bead bracelet to calm her down. But she continues crying, and Shigure wakes up to give her some advice about the future. Shigure says that if she has a mountain of problems, the first step is to solve the problem that is closest to her, and then continue solving the others, and without realizing it, she will soon have solved the mountain of problems. But the important thing is to take breaks while solve those problems, like watching TV, reading a book, or having dinner with friends. So Tohru prepares a quick late-night snack for the Soma boys, glad to have them by her side. The next day, Yuki wakes up from a nightmare about his mother, and his morning doesn't get any better because Ayame is home to visit him. Yuki gets exasperated quickly, so Ayame decides to leave. Incredibly, Yuki stops him, and Ayame gets so excited that he starts shaking him and accidentally rips his sweater, so Ayame says that he will sew it up quickly. But instead of sewing it, he embroiders a message of brotherly love on his back, which makes Yuki angry again, so Ayame takes the opportunity to invite him to see his shop. For the second time that day, Yuki surprises Ayame by accepting the invitation, since he also wants to get to know his brother a little more, but Ayame gets so excited again that he invites Tohru so that the two can spend time together and warns Kyo, tells him not to go, and he happily agrees to stay home. Yuki is a little embarrassed by his brother's attitude, and Tohru says that she has wanted to visit Ayame's shop for a long time, since she is curious what kind of shop sells wedding dresses and outfits for maids and nurses. On Sunday, Yuki and Tohru visit Ayame's shop, and at first glance it seems like a simple craft shop, but the employee is dressed as a maid and Ayame is wearing a wedding dress. Ayame explains to his brother the truth of the men. His shop is in charge of making each man's hidden desire, no matter how little the client's request is, Ayame will make it come true. Benmine, Ayame's employee, takes Tohru to dress her in an outfit from the shop, but in reality, she wanted her boss and his brother to be alone. Tohru is worried that they will fight, but Mine says that a fight is good because it means they acknowledge each other's presence, since what Ayame fears most is indifference. Alone, Ayame says that he can go to the parent-teacher conference instead of their parents, but Yuki says that he will ask his parents to go, even though they don't get along, because they sold him to have a peaceful life. Ayame feels guilty because he also contributed to Yuki's hard childhood. He left him to his fate in order to have freedom, and the only time Yuki asked him for help, he ignored him. Over the years, he understood how Yuki felt, since he is now the one ignored, but he wants to remedy it. Yuki says that he cannot run away from his parents forever, so he prefers to face them soon, although first he wants to choose what he will do with his future. So Ayame accepts and tells him that what matters is what he wants to do, and remember that he is not alone anymore. He also talks to him a little about how exciting it is for him to create outfits, since it is something that would not exist if it were not for him, and Yuki thinks about his vegetable garden and agrees for the first time with his brother. To change the gloomy atmosphere, Ayame changes the subject and says that he found out that he will be the new president of the student council, and that makes him very happy because he is following his footsteps, but Yuki fervently denies that, and the fight makes Ayame happy because there is indifference in his eyes. Suddenly, Mime returns with Tohru wearing a cute white dress, and Yuki is unable to compliment her, so Ayame takes charge and wants to give her a kiss, but he earns a slap on the head from Yuki. Then Yuki tells Tohru that she looks pretty, and he is glad he came to his brother's shop because now he knows him a little better, and he could see her wearing a nice dress. This is heard by Ayame and says that he can feel the romance, and immediately calls Hattori to tell him that perhaps Yuki has fallen in love for the first time, and all thanks to him. Days later, Haru goes to the Soma family hospital to visit his girlfriend Rin and brings her red roses, but she says that she is fed up with him and breaks up with him. The next day, Momiji runs to Tohru's classroom and wants to tell them something urgent, but he gets distracted because Tohru and her friends are talking about the fall school trip, and Kyo, as always, says that he doesn't want to be in the same group as Yuki. Momiji then tells him about all the fun things he can do with Tohru, and Kyo almost confesses that he would love to spend time with her, but he blushes and scolds them to stop messing with him. Yuki enters the classroom and asks Momiji what he is doing there, and he remembers that he came to tell them that Haru became Dark Haru and is destroying his classroom. The three boys, Soma and Tohru, run to stop him, and Yuki realizes that Haru is darker than ever, and they do not understand what happened to him. He says that he no longer cares if the truth comes to light. They would be freer if that happened, and grabs Tohru by the arm roughly. That makes Kyo angry, and he punches him to get away from her. That makes Dark Haru angrier because he thinks that Kyo wants to impress Tohru. Suddenly, Professor Mayu arrives and throws a tile of cold water at them to cool them down, and it works. Dark Haru is Haru again. After that, the school calls Haru's mother, and he prefers to wait for her alone and leaves. Momiji tells them that Haru has been sad lately, and Yuki decides to go talk to him. So Kyo tells Tohru that she shouldn't get close to Dark Haru because he gets out of control sometimes, and as she tries to protest, Momiji says that Kyo is worried about her and both blush. Meanwhile, Yuki talks to Haru and apologizes for being so focused on himself and not noticing that he was having a hard time, since Haru is one of the most empathetic Zodiacs and always cares about others, trying to solve their problems. But Haru tells him that he is not selfish because he came to check on him. So Haru confesses about his secret relationship with Rin and how she broke up with him. Yuki thinks that Akito found out and separated them, but Haru says that he is the first one to find out and now he doesn't know how to go on without Rin. Later, Kyo can't stop thinking about Tohru and thinks that it is hypocritical to want to protect her from Dark Haru, when he is more dangerous in his true form. The next day, Momiji tells them that Haru was suspended and Tohru worries about him, so Yuki decides to go visit him at the Soma estate. Near the Soma estate, Yuki begins to feel nauseous and horrible memories of when he lived there overcome him, but he tries to take courage and enter. He goes to Haru's house and is surprised to see that he is fine now, and Haru tells him that he will not give up on Rin because he loves her a lot and will show it to her. Then Yuki leaves happy because his friend is fine, and he doesn't realize that he was being watched by Rin. Days later, Gotani runs into work with a boy just as clumsy than Tohru, which causes her to laugh and the boy is delighted by her. The next day, summer break begins and Gotani tells the girls that she met someone just as clumsy as Tohru and wants to see him again. After that, Tohru meets the Soma boys and Haru invites himself to dinner at Shigure's house, but Momiji has a better idea to start the summer break and takes everyone to a haunted house. Tohru says that she's not afraid, but it's clearly a lie and decides to go in because Momiji is so excited. Unfortunately, Tohru has a bad time at the haunted house and gets scared by everything, and although she tries to laugh to distract herself, it doesn't work. So she decides to walk with her eyes closed and keep stumbling. Then Kyo and Yuki both offer her their hand at the same time and start fighting again, so Momiji holds Tohru's hand and scolds the other boys for fighting instead of helping a scared lady. Haru intervenes and gives Tohru the solution to not be scared. He makes up very sad stories about the scary robots. The story is so sad that Momiji and Tohru cry. Meanwhile, Gotani takes a break from her second part-time job and suddenly she sees her crush and encourages herself to talk to him. He's also surprised to see her and invites her to eat something. He is Koreano and he is 9 years older than Gotani. He tells her that he just works and lives, and although it is a pathetic life, he is happy, and when he met her, he was just using his spare time to do something since he does not know what to do when he has a day off from work. That bothers Gotani because their first meeting was very special for her, and she notices that Koreano's smiles are very lonely, so she decides to leave before finishing lunch. Gotani walks very angry because she feels that she only wasted time with him, but Koreano chases her and apologizes because he explained himself wrong. For him, it was also a special meeting because he hasn't stopped thinking about her since the night he met her, and for the first time, he really smiles and that makes Gotani fall in love with him. After that, Gotani meets with Hana and her little brother and tells them about the man she likes, and she says that she probably won't see him again because she doesn't want to pursue him. Meanwhile, Koreano returns to the Soma estate and meets with Akito in his room. While he hugs him affectionately, he can't stop thinking about Gotani's lips. Days later, Momiji goes to Shigure's house and invites them to his summer gateway to one of the Soma's vacation houses and tells them that he invited almost all the Zodiacs. Tohru is so amazed by the idea that she almost forgets that she has a lot of summer schoolwork to do, so Yuki offers to help her. Momiji goes to Kyo's room and tells him about the summer gateway idea, and he agrees to go after he finds out that Tohru wants to go, and Momiji says Kyo became much nicer. Meanwhile, in Tohru's room, Yuki sees the blue cap and asks Tohru about it, and she tells him the story of her childhood, and he is surprised that she keeps the cap so fondly even though she does not remember the kid's face. The next day, Shigure tells them that he will go to the vacation house later because he still has work to do, and when everyone leaves, Rin comes out from where she is hiding. She begs him for help because Shigure knows what she wants. On the beach, Tohru, Kiza, and Momiji are the most excited when it comes to playing in the sea, while Yuki, Kyo, and Hiro prefer not to enter the water, but Tohru starts swimming fast to a rock without breathing, so she is tired quickly, and Kyo goes to help her, which makes Tohru very happy. Then Haru proposes a swimming race and convinces Yuki to accept so that Kyo accepts too, and so the hours pass with everyone having fun. In the afternoon, they return to the house and Tohru drops her pocketbook and Hiro returns it to her and asks why she always only talks about her mom and doesn't mention her father. That question throws Tohru off and she prefers not to answer and continue walking. Then Kiza gets very upset with Hiro because she thinks he only came to bother Tohru, and Hiro realizes that he has it out with Tohru again when he doesn't let out his stress for not being able to show his feelings. At night, Kiza apologizes to Hiro because she wasn't nice to him either, and he also apologizes for being so rude sometimes, while Tohru can't sleep thinking about his parents. The next day, Tohru decides to pretend that she is fine and acts more cheerful than normal, and only Kyo notices that she is sad and scolds Hiro. Meanwhile, Akito is in a bad mood because the heat makes him sicker, and he keeps thinking that the Zodiacs are having a good time at the summer house with Tohru, and he wants to teach him a lesson. Then Shigure says that he can go to the summer house with him. Back at the summer house, Yuki feels a little weak because he spent a lot of time in the sun. So Tohru takes care of him and he says that in the future, he wants to tell her something. It turns out that he is the child who helped Tohru to return home and gave her his blue cap. The next day, Shigure arrives at the summer house and as always flirts with Tohru, making Yuki and Kyo angry. Suddenly, Hiro receives a call from his mother. She is pregnant and Tohru congratulates him for having a sibling soon, and Momiji says that they should split watermelons to celebrate. Everyone is happy for Hiro since his mother will have a common baby because all the Zodiacs have been born, although Haru says that Hiro's mother is the best because when he was born and transformed into a sheep, she loved him even more. While Tohru takes care of them, Yuki watches her thinking that the malicious comments that Akito made to him were a lie. He used to lock him in a dark room and then whisper to him that there was no light in the world, that his situation would never change. But he was wrong. Now there is light in Yuki's life. Although he prefers not to continue watching her now that Kyo is with her and is going for a walk. Kyo scolds Tohru because he realized that she is harboring her feelings again, and she asks him about his parents. He says that his mother passed away a long time ago and he distanced himself from his father too. Then Kyo asks her if she had fun with her mom splitting watermelons, and she starts telling him her summer stories, making Kyo smile, and that makes Tohru happier. Meanwhile, Yuki runs into Akito and Kurino on his walk, and Akito mocks him by saying that he is alone as always. After that, Shigure goes to the summer house to tell the Somas that Akito is here and will stay in the annex of the house, but they must go greet him. Kyo can't go because he is the cat, and the cat is always excluded from the Zodiac gatherings, and that makes Tohru sad. So she says she will cook something to wait for the others and asks him what he is craving, and he shyly says he never ate pancakes. The Somas go to the annex of the house, and Kisa and Momiji are the most worried about Tohru. Kisa is afraid that Akito will hit Tohru like he did to her, and Momiji wants everything to end so he can return to Tohru, but Haru warns him that he must prepare to face Akito, since he is the one Akito dislikes the most. Upon arriving at the annex, Shigure goes to talk to Akito first, and Hattori tells Shigure that he's in a bad mood because of the heat. When Akito sees them, he orders Kurino to leave and not see anyone else, then hugs Hattori affectionately and tells them that he saw Yuki earlier and scolded him like when he was a child, and he almost cried. That amuses him a lot because he thinks that Yukito will soon return to his side. Then Akito goes to greet the younger Zodiacs and orders Shigure not to leave until he says otherwise. Alone, Hattori says that he already realized what Shigure is doing. He is trying to move things to change the destiny. At night, Tohru worries because the others do not return and decides to go outside to wait for them, but she finds a thoughtful Yuki on the beach. He tells her that he has already clarified his feelings and thanks her for always being kind and for saving him when he was a child. It turns out that Akito always told him that he was useless and no one needed him, so one day he ran away and ran into a girl crying and helped her get back to her house, and to this day, Tohru remembers it, and that opened his eyes that what Akito said was a lie. He was not useless. Then Tohru asks him why he looks so sad if he decided to move forward, and he hugs her and kisses her on the forehead and starts to cry, whispering that she is like the sky, and he is sad because he realized that she is important to him. Meanwhile, at the Soma estate, Kagura tries to convince Rin to go to the summer house because she wants to be by Kyo's side, but Rin asks her to stop pretending to like Kyo and leaves. The next day, Tohru can't stop remembering last night and tries to decipher what Yuki whispered to her. But he spoke to her so quietly that she didn't understand him, and Hattori realizes it and asks her if she's okay, and apologizes for taking the Zodiacs away again, since Akito requested to spend time with them and that interferes with Tohru's summer vacation. But she assures him that it is fine because she spends time with Kyo, and is happy because Hattori cares about her. After that, Tohru invites Kyo to play in the sand with her. In the annex, Shigure asks Yuki what Akito told him, and he calmly answers that Akito told him the truth, and that leaves Shigure thoughtful. Meanwhile, in another room, Akito is with Haru. He wants Akito to give Kurino permission to meet Tohru, since he is part of the Zodiac too, but he laughs and while caressing his cheek tells him that he is funny, because he is the laughingstock of the Zodiacs. In the afternoon, the other Zodiacs return to the summer house and find Tohru and Kyo building sand castles. Then Yuki talks to Tohru alone and apologizes for worrying her with everything he said to her last night, but he doesn't regret the kiss on her forehead, and she confesses that she didn't really hear what he told her, and he whispers in her ear that he will tell her again in the future. After that, Yuki warns Kyo not to make Akito angry if he sees him by chance. He doesn't want Akito's anger to be turned on Tohru, and Kyo gets angry because he thinks he will lose his temper, but deep down he knows that Yuki is right. The next day, Akito and Kurino go out for a walk, and Shigure tells Hattori that Akito has a superiority complex because he thinks he is better than Tohru, and that is why he orders them to spend time with him in the annex to isolate Tohru. This is heard by Yuki, who decides to follow Akito. Meanwhile, Akito tells Kurino that he will let him meet Tohru because he wants her to get attached to him and then take it away from her, just like he does with all the other Zodiacs. But Kurino says that Tohru is not having a bad time because she is with Kyo, but Akito thinks that this is a punishment for him. Kyo is a monster, so Akito is surprised when they arrive at the beach and sees Kyo and Tohru playing in the sand. Meanwhile, Yuki also watches Akito and notices that he's paying attention to Kyo and worries about what he might do, but out of the corner of his eye, he sees something that surprises him. Later, Tohru goes out to hang the sheets, but the wind blows one away and Tohru runs out to look for it, but what she finds is a weak horse. Suddenly, Yuki also arrives and says that she is Rin, the Zodiac horse. As she looks weak, Tohru says she will call Hattori, and that angers Rin so much that she almost kicks her in the face if it weren't for Yuki. Then Rin transforms into a human and Tohru quickly puts the sheet over her and goes to the house to look for clothes for her. Alone, Yuki asks Rin if she came to the beach to see someone, and that makes her angry and says she doesn't plan to talk to Akito's toy, but that doesn't faze Yuki, and that makes her angrier and she leaves, and Yuki asks Tohru to keep Rin's secret. Meanwhile, in the annex, Akito tells Shigure that he wants to see Kyo. The next day, Akito wonders when he started to care so much about Tohru. Without realizing it, all he wants is to see her smile. His daydream is interrupted by Shigure, who tells him that Akito wants to see him. That makes Tohru very happy because she thinks that Kyo will finally be accepted as a Zodiac. Kyo knows that is not the case, but he doesn't tell her. In the annex, Yuki warns Kyo not to lose his temper with Akito, and Kyo almost hits him, but stops himself and goes to talk to Akito. He mockingly asks him about the bet. It turns out that Akito and Kyo made a bet. If Kyo managed to defeat Yuki, Akito would allow him to join the Zodiac, but if Kyo didn't succeed, Akito would lock him up forever after graduating from high school. What bothers Kyo the most is that Akito seems to be right. No matter how much he defies destiny, he still can't beat Yuki, and she mocks him, saying that it is written that the cat will never beat the rat, and it is time for him to accept his destiny. Akito says that he is a monster for being born, and because of him his mother took her life, and in her eyes, Tohru is also a monster because she likes spending time with him, and when she saw him in his true form, she didn't run away from him, and that turns her into a monster too. Kyo glares at him, and that lack of respect angers Akito, and he slaps him in the face. Kyo says that Tohru is not a monster, because even though she was afraid, she refused to leave his side, and that's just what makes her so special. Suddenly, Kyo begins to reflect how much he cares about Tohru and realizes that he loves her, and without realizing it, tears escape from his eyes, and Akito mocks, saying that a monster fell in love with another monster. Then Kyo decides to lie to Akito and denies having fallen in love because of being like him cannot love anyone, and he feels guilty that because of him, Akito speaks badly of Tohru. Akito believes him and recommends him to be a good boy for the short time he has left living outside, and promises to go visit him in his cage when they lock him up. After that, Akito goes to wash his hands because he felt sick just touching Kyo, and asks Yuki if it's true that Kyo hates Tohru, and Yuki confirms it, even though it's a lie. On the way home, Kyo thinks about his mother and the guilt he feels for how she ended up, and feels that he doesn't deserve Tohru, but still, he just wants to get home to be by her side, and remembers what Kazuma told him once. His sensei said that Kyo had hope in his heart since he had been rejected by many people, but still he had hoped to find someone who would stay by his side. When Kyo comes home and doesn't see Tohru, he remembers Kyoko, Tohru's mom. She was one of the few people who cared about Kyo, and she told him that her treasure was Tohru, and Kyo used to watch her from afar. Years later, the little girl blossomed into a beautiful girl who he doesn't want to part with, so he runs to the beach and silently vows to forget about his love for her and enjoy her company until he is locked up. She gets worried seeing his hurt cheek, but he brushes her off and takes her hand to take her home. When Tohru enters the house, she sees that there are a lot of fireworks on the table, and Yuki tells her that Momiji bought them to say goodbye to the summer tomorrow, and Tohru realizes that summer break went by super fast because she had a lot of fun. At that moment, the youngest favorite anime starts, and Tohru goes to look for Momiji, who's talking to Kyo, and she stays listening. Momiji tells him that everyone was obeying Akito so that he wouldn't turn his anger on Tohru, but he felt selfish because he just wanted to go back to Tohru every day, and Kyo agrees that he just wants to spend time with her and thanks them for putting up with Akito. So Tohru pretends she didn't hear anything and takes Momiji to watch TV. Later, in the annex, Akito is angry with Shigure because before he was nicer to her, but since Tohru appeared in their lives, he has changed, and before he can answer, Kurino informs her that there is a problem on the main estate. Akito changes her clothes to leave, but first goes to the summer house to talk to Tohru, and is seen by Momiji. He realizes that he is angry and does not allow him to enter the house, which earns him a very hard punch in the face. Fortunately, Tohru was not able to sleep and was out for a walk and sees them and stops Akito before she continues to hurt Momiji. Akito cannot believe Tohru's disrespect and tells her to stop trying to save Yuki and Kyo, since Kyo will soon be locked in a cage and the other Zodiacs will move in with him on the main estate. Akito says that this is a happy ending for everyone, but Tohru contradicts him, earning a withering look, and she realizes that Akito is not just any Zodiac and rules out that he is the rooster. Then Akito mockingly tells her that he is the god of the Zodiacs, and Tohru remembers her mother's stories, where the god was surrounded and worshipped by the other Zodiacs, and concludes that they cannot disobey Akito because he is their god. Luckily, this doesn't go any further because Kurino arrives and Akito introduces the last Zodiac, the rooster, and before leaving, Akito scratches Tohru's face. She begins to think that this is the curse that chains the Zodiacs and wonders if Akito is also chained to that curse. After that, Hattori and Shigure arrive with Momiji, and Shigure says that Momiji embarrassed everyone by acting quickly and asking for help, while the other Zodiacs decided not to get involved in the fight because they knew that everything would get worse if they interfered between Akito and Tohru. The one who least agreed was Kyo, who they had to hold down to not get out, and Haru says that the most difficult thing is stay still to protect someone. The next day, at Manji's request, everyone starts playing with fireworks earlier than usual, and Tohru continues thinking about the curse that the Soma family has. To her, everyone seems to be living the best, they can only be locked away, so she decides to assign herself the task of breaking the curse, since she wants to protect the future of her precious friends, even if it means risking herself. The next day, everyone returns home and finds Aniyam there, because Shigure forgot to lock the doors. He says that he found out that Akito came to see them and regrets not having been there to watch over his brother. Now she just wants to hug him to comfort that fragile heart, but Yuki just glares at him. Meanwhile, Tohru speaks on the phone to Kazuma's dojo and says that tomorrow she will go to see him. At the dojo, Tohru says that she knows that Kyo will be locked up after graduating and the other Zodiacs will live in isolation on the Soma estate with Akito. She begs him to give her the information she needs to break the curse, and Kazuma sadly says that he doesn't know what to do either. To others, Akito is an unstable, hysterical, and capricious boy, but to the Zodiacs he is a god who must be obeyed and worshipped. It is a bond that cannot be seen. Kazuma theorizes that this bond is the curse, and Tohru says that she will not give up. She wants to see what Kyo will look like in the future, and that gives Kazuma hope that the time Kyo is spent with Tohru will give him forces to form another bond. Meanwhile, Kagura goes looking for Kyo, and instead of fervently rejecting her like he always does, he tells her that they must talk about something serious, and she realizes that everything will be over soon. So she says that she will only listen to him if they go to a date. On Sunday, Kagura takes Kyo to the secret park where they met, and she remembers that she started talking to him because she felt sorry for him. He was ostracized and humiliated by the other Somas, and that made her think that having the spirit of the boar was not so bad. But one time she accidentally took the rosary off of his wrist, and he transformed into his true cat form, and she ran away scared, feeling dirty. Then she confesses that she forced herself to fall in love with him to erase the shame she felt having run away from him. She thought that if she fell in love with him and he with her, everything would be forgotten and forgiven. But recently she realized that was stupid, because Tohru ran after him when she saw him in his true form. Kyo breaks his silence and confesses that he will never be able to love her, and thanks her for having played with him when they were children, since that made him very happy. This breaks Kagura, who begins to cry uncontrollably, telling him that she loves him, even though it is a selfish love, and he hugs her and thanks her for her love. Later, Kagura returns home, and her mother is worried about seeing her daughter's swollen eyes, and she says that she deserved it and locks herself in her room, since she wants to stay with the sensation of Kyo's hug, who hugged her until her tears dried up. Days later, Professor Mayu takes over her father's bookstore and remembers with nostalgia the happy moments of her friend Kana and Hattori, but her memories are interrupted by Shigure. He came to pick up a book that he ordered. Mayu says that the book will come tomorrow, but he does not go. She realizes that her life is still tied to the Somas, even though it's been 2 years since Kana introduced her to Hattori. At that time, she realized that Hana and Hattori were a couple, but for some strange reason, they kept it a secret. Then, Shigure realized that she was in love with Hattori and proposed going out so she would not feel alone, and she accepted, because the only thing that mattered to her was that her friend and Hattori were happy. Unfortunately, that did not last, and she only saw her friend once in the black period of her madness. Thanks to Shigure, and some time later, Kana returned to life without memories of Hattori, and even told Mayu that she and Hattori would be a perfect match. So Mayu broke up with Shigure and promised not to forget the happy moments that Mayu and Hattori lived together. Shigure scolds Mayu for not trying to date Hattori, but now it's too late because he has a girlfriend, and that surprises Mayu. Then he proposes to go out again, and she declines because she doesn't want to go out with someone again just because she feels lonely, and he leaves saying that he went out with her because he likes her personality. The next day, Hattori returns to the bookstore to pick up his book, and Mayu takes him away because her mother thinks he is her boyfriend. He sees that he doesn't seem happy even though he has a girlfriend, and he says that happiness eludes him. Then Mayu breaks down and starts crying uncontrollably because she doesn't want him to be unhappy. She wants him to be free. Hattori tries to calm her down and tells her that he is just exhausted and maybe he also needs to cry like her, and takes out a handkerchief to dry her tears and thanks her for crying for him. A calmer Mayu tells him that this is the last time, and next time he should ask his girlfriend to cry for him, and he clarifies that he doesn't have a girlfriend, Shigure was just messing with her. Mayu gets angry and that makes him smile, and he decides to invite her to drink something and she accepts. The next day, Mayu receives a call from Shigure and he tells her that he just wanted to give the two of them a little push, the rest depends on them. But he knows that she will wait whatever it takes to be with him. What no one knew is that in the near future, their love would blossom. Days later, a new school term begins and Yuki's fans give him welcome cookies. But a girl interrupts them and calls Yum Yum to Yuki. The fans get angry and the girl named Kimi takes him away laughing. He asks her why she calls him like that, and she says that Kakeru created that nickname for him, and Yuki is speechless. The two enter the student council room and Yuki finds out that Kimi is also part of the council, and the last member is now Hito, a boy who claims to be his rival. Yuki realizes that all the members have different personalities and she doesn't know if she can guide them well, but Kakeru interrupts his fears and asks him to say a few words. Yuki gets nervous and says that he will work hard this year and asks them to work hard with him. He says all this while looking at Machi's back, who has not yet turned to see him. After that, Yuki and Kakeru go to visit all the student clubs and Kakeru keeps falling asleep. This bothers Yuki because he thinks he is like his brother, but he also feels that he is like Kyo, a guy who radiates so much light that everyone wants to be his friends and think that he would have been a better president. Finally, they return to the council room and Kakeru gets serious for the first time. He thinks that they are the special school forces and wants everyone to have a color. But Kimi starts fighting with Machi about the color pink. Despite that, Machi doesn't say a single word and Yuki cancels the color choice. Before going home, Yuki goes to help the gardening club and Kakeru tells him that he saw Kyo and Tohru walking home together and thinks that they are a couple because Kyo looks happier than him, and that makes Yuki angry. He says that he shouldn't judge other people by how they look, and that lecture makes Kakeru angry, and they almost come to blows. But it's Yuki who is judging the student council the whole time, so he asks for forgiveness. And Kakeru also apologizes for overreacting and says that he was once told that he doesn't know how to read people, and that's why he makes unnecessary comments and envies him. Because Yuki knows how to treat others, his apology is so sincere, which brings Yuki tears even if he doesn't show it. Days later, the parent-teacher conference begins and Yuki apologizes to Professor Mayu because his mother postponed the meeting indefinitely. Next is Yutani, who says that maybe she will be a model since she is very tall. Hana settles for graduating, while Tohru thanks Shigure for accompanying her. When Mayu sees Shigure, she is speechless, but she feigns cordiality just like him. Tohru says that she wants to work as soon as she graduates, and Mayu tells her that she can still enter college. Before leaving, Shigure tells Tohru that he wants to talk to Mayu alone, and Tohru gets nervous because she felt the icy waves between the two of them, but leaves them alone anyway. Shigure jokes that it's a good thing they didn't get very far in their relationship because now she's dating Hattori and that frustrates her, but she changes the subject and asks him to be nicer to Tohru, and he thinks Rin told him the same thing. Shigure says that he is already nice to Tohru, even though he is using her to get something. Meanwhile, Hamina and Yutani also warn Tohru to be careful with Shigure because he is hiding something, but Tohru blindly trusts him. Suddenly, they see Kyo and Kazuma, and Yutani doesn't understand why the two don't look alike, unlike Hana, who only notices Kazuma and says that he is gorgeous, leaving the other two girls speechless. In the classroom, Kaio says that he still doesn't know what path to take in his future, and Kazuma assures him that he is free to choose whatever he wants, although he can only think about the little time he has left, and he just wants to spend it with Tohru. Days later, Yuki's mother goes to school to talk about Yuki's future, and she tells Mayu that her son's future has already been decided. He will graduate, go to college, and then become the leader of the Soma family. Yuki tries to interrupt her, but he has no courage, and she says that he should thank her for already planning a future for him, because he never decides anything, he always lives in indecision. Yuki tries to oppose but can't. His mother has never listened to him. To her, he is just a tool to have money and status. Suddenly, Ayam enters the room and their mother gets scared because she can't control Ayam. He tells her that he will support Yuki in whatever he wants to do, and their mother says that the two of them abandon Yuki when he asks for help. But Yuki finally speaks and says that he can lean on Ayam now, and for Ayam, This is the happiest moment of his life. Then, Ayame gets serious and tells their mother that Yuki gave him a second chance and she can have one too. But the woman leaves angry and Yuki decides to follow her and takes courage to tell her about his future. She listens to him and leaves. For the first time, Yuki feels proud of himself, and it is thanks to Tohru's words of encouragement. Days later, Mutani tells her friends that she left her old part-time job because she was always waiting to see Kirino come in, and she's not like that. The name Kirino catches Tohru's attention, and she asks if she is referring to Shigure Soma. But the two compare the personalities of their Kirinos, and Yotani says that maybe he is not the same and says that she will forget about him. At night, Tohru asks Kyo about Kirino, and he says that he is Akito's secretary, but he never leaves the Soma estate and does not interact with the other Zodiacs. The next day, Tohru decides to go to the Soma estate to talk to Kirino about Yotani, but she is so afraid to enter that she decides to go around the estate and bumps into Momo. The little girl was listening to Momiji playing the violin from outside. Momo takes Tohru enter through a secret entrance and the two hide behind a tree. Momo tells her that her wish is to have a big brother, and when she met Momoji, he seemed just like her mom, and now her father forbade her to speak to him. But she wants Momoji to be her brother and play the violin together. After that, Tohru talks to Momiji and he tells her that he stopped taking violin lessons because Momo also plays the violin, and their teacher began to suspect the truth. Not only that, Momo began to be curious about him. That breaks Tohru completely, and she starts to cry and tells him that Momo always listens to him play the violin. She loves him without knowing the truth, and that makes Momiji happy, because his dream is to be a professional violinist, and one day, he will hold a little concert and play for his family. Tohru realizes that distance only strengthens feelings and tells Momiji that she is looking for Kirino, and he says that it is difficult to see him, so he will go with her to look for him and take responsibility if Akito finds her. But Tohru prefers to go alone, and Momiji draws her a map. She quickly finds Kirino, but she has to hide from many people, and she almost gets caught by a woman looking like Akito. But Kirino saves her and takes her somewhere else to talk. She asks him if he knows Yotani, and he says that he doesn't plan to see her again, and she is disappointed. Although she decides to give him Yotani's contact information because maybe one day he will want to find her, and he smiles sadly at her, and that breaks Tohru's heart. After that, Kirino returns her to Momiji, since he was following her all this time to help her if necessary. At his house, Tohru apologizes for her inconveniences, and Momiji thanks her for letting him know about Momo. That has made him very happy, and he promises to play her a song she chooses one day. At night, Tohru goes up to the roof to think, and Kyo goes up too to be with her, and she melancholy asks him if people who love others want to be close to that person, and Kyo seriously asks her if she has a crush, and assures her that he will support her. But she starts crying without knowing why, or so she thinks, because perhaps her tears are for a wish that she cannot fulfill, as has always happened to her. It's time for the fall trip to Kyoto, but so many things have happened that Kyo and Tohru completely forgot about the trip. Although Kyo doesn't really want to go, and Shigure scolds him because school trips are a perfect opportunity to confess love to the people we love. And Shigure was right. As soon as they arrive, some students begin to confess their feelings, and the girls are surprised that Yuki is not being surrounded by girls, but the reality is that his fan club is acting as bodyguards so that no one gets close to him. Then Yuki says that Kyo is more popular and points out that Kyo is no longer with them because surely a girl is confessing her feelings to him, and that surprises Tohru. Botami and Kyo's friends track him down to spy on him and are not surprised to see him pissed off and rejected the girl outright. Then the girl accuses Yotani of wanting to steal Kyo and earns a scolding from both of them. Kyo is so upset that he even speaks rough to Tohru, and Yuki notices that his words hurt her, so he hits him on the head, and Tohru's friends approve. After that, Tohru remains taciturn in the souvenir shop, wondering why she was so hurt by Kyo's rudeness when he always behaved like that. Then she sees him playing with a kitten, which then he pushes away, and she wonders if she will also be pushed away from his side by him, and before he leaves her side, she takes his arm and he doesn't react abruptly, but takes her hands softly and asks if she wants to spend time with him, and she happily accepts and realizes that with a few words, Kyo can make her sad or happy. The next day, Yuki wakes up stressed because he doesn't know what to buy as souvenirs for Nao and Mashi, and Kakeru says that they shouldn't buy them anything because neither of them wanted souvenirs. The trip is coming to an end, and Kakeru asks Yuki about Tohru, and Yuki says that if he likes Tohru and Tohru likes him, it is none of his business, but he forbids him to hurting her or he will never forgive him, and inevitably he thinks about Kyo. Kakeru tests his patience and asks what he will do if he does that, and Yuki says that they won't be friends anymore. Before they continue arguing, Kimi appears and tells Yuki that Kakeru has a girlfriend, and he is even more surprised to see how he is so open with his feelings and hopes that one day he can achieve it too. Then, a wind blows beautiful autumn leaves, and he can't help but think about his future, as he grabs one and takes it as a souvenir to Machi. They all return home with lots of souvenirs, and when Kyo goes to look for Tohru in her room to go out to eat, he sees that she was molding the cat in clay to complete her Zodiac figurines, and they both blush. Meanwhile, Hiro and Kizo walk home and talk about Hiro's mom, and he complains because she is very clumsy, and he and his dad always have to be taking care of her. Then he sees Rin and runs to ask her if she is feeling okay since he sees her pale, and she rudely says that she doesn't want to talk to someone so privileged, and Hiro realizes that she is envious of his loving family. So he changes the subject and asks if Shigure told her how to break the curse, but she leaves remembering how she offered herself to Shigure, so he could tell her how to break the Zodiac curse, but he rejects her and says that he doesn't know how. He thinks that she overestimates him because Akito doesn't favor him like she thinks. Then she goes to the Soma Estate Library and starts looking for old information in family scrolls about the curse, but she starts to feel bad and faints. Hours later, she wakes up and flees to Shigure's house so that no one sees her in that state. The first one to find her is Tohru, and the bad memories engulf Rin, and she thinks Tohru is her mom and starts begging not to hurt her like she's a little girl. It turns out that when she was a little girl, her parents and she lived a happy life, so one day she asked them if they were sad and her life changed forever. The play that her parents had put on came to an end, and every time they were in a bad mood, they hit her. She was so afraid of them that one day she fainted on the street, and Haru found her and contacted Kazuma to take her to the hospital. When Rin woke up, her parents informed her that they did not want to see her again and abandoned her. She began to crawl towards them, begging them not to abandon her, and Haru got so angry that he demanded that they apologize to Rin for everything they had done to her. Then the two cried together, and Rin thanked him for stepping up for her. After that, Rin went to live at Kagura's house, but living in a happy family with another Zodiac girl made her feel worse because she didn't understand what went wrong in her family, and she kept thinking that everything was her fault. But fortunately for her, Haru did not walk away from her, and their love blossomed, taking her away from the pain. As they grew older, they realized that they could no longer deny the love they felt for each other, and although she was afraid that Akito would find out, she gave herself to Haru, and Rin finally felt that someone loved her. The happiness did not last long. Akito found out the truth and summoned Rin to talk to her and asked her who seduced who and warned her to answer correctly, and Rin decided to say that she had seduced Haru, which made Akito so angry that he hit her and started yelling at her that no one wanted her, pushing her off the balcony. All this was seen by Hiro, and while Rin fell, she decided to free Haru from her love because she already had many happy moments with him, and she only cares that he is well, and the best way to keep him safe is to stay away. When Rin wakes up, she sees that Shigure and Hattori are with her and feels embarrassed because they saw her in that state and tries to run away, but Tohru stops her and Shigure scolds her, saying that she must learn to take care of herself if she plans to keep everyone away. After that, Hattori leaves because he has to return before Akito realizes that he is not there, and Shigure tells him that Rin is looking for a way to break the curse, and when the wind starts to roar, he says that it is the sound of that something is breaking. At night, Tohru goes to see Rin, and she tries to push her away because she knows that she is kind, and she feels that she takes advantage of kind people, just like she did with Haru, and warns her not to meddle with the curse. That catches Toru's attention, and she starts shouting that she won't give up. There are things she doesn't want to lose, and Rin starts shouting that she doesn't want to lose any more things either, but she can't free the one she loves. The whole mess gets the boys up, and Rin runs away because she knows that if she stays any longer, she will cling to Tohru, because ever since she saw her, she felt the need to hug her and cry on her lap, and that's exactly what happens. And Tohru comforts her by saying that she understands her. It's very scary to be on your own. After that, Rin agrees to be hospitalized. The next day, Haru tells Yuki that he went to visit Rin in the hospital, but she kicked him out of the room, but he will still try to visit her again because he doesn't want to lose her. Suddenly, Kakeru comes to look for Yuki, and Haru really likes his outgoing personality and asks him to take care of Yuki. At night, Yuki tells the plans that the student council has for the culture festival, and Shigure says that he should ask Ayame for advice, but Yuki says that his ideas would be very expensive. Then, Tohru gives them jelly, and Keo realizes that she went to visit Rin, and she says that he reads her very well lately, which surprises Yuki, and Shigure apologizes to her for involving her in family problems, but Tohru says that she couldn't leave someone who hugged her with so much pain, and when she went to see her at the hospital, Rin told her that he likes jellos. The next day, Tohru brings jellos to Rin, and she suspects that Tohru came to talk about the curse, but Tohru didn't even realize that, and she feels a little embarrassed. After that, the two go for a walk, and Tohru asks her what Rin knows about the curse, and she says that thousands of years ago, the Zodiac spirits and God made a promise to always be together, and every time they are reborn, they remember that promise. It is imposed in their... For Rin, the bond is chains that tie them to Akito. She says that no one knows how to break the curse, or maybe Aikido does, but there is no way to find out, and Tohru suggests that Kurino can help them. But Rin stops her before Tohru runs off in search of Kurino, as she thinks it is a far-fetched idea. Then Rin asks her why she wants to break the curse, which is what she wants to save so much, and Tohru remains silent. At night, Tohru has nightmares about the day her mother left home and had the accident that took her life. While in the hospital, Rin hopes that someone will appear in Tohru's life, someone like Haru who appear in her life, because she recognized in Tohru's eyes that she is about to break, and she doesn't want her to be alone when that happens. Days later, Yuki announces to his classmates that the school festival play will be Cinderella, and to the dismay of his fan club, he cannot be the prince because he has a lot of work to do as president of the student council, so that they should vote for him for another role. At that moment, Kakeru picks him up to go to the school festival committee meeting and recommends that he buy a cell phone, but Yuki says that he needs his mother's permission and his family situation is complicated. They pass by the student council room and see that Machi has caused a disaster, and Kakeru asks Yuki and the other members to pretend like nothing happened and apologize to the two of them to the festival committee members. After the festival committee meeting, Yuki, Nao, and Kimi return to the council room and see Kakeru still cleaning up the mess. Machi had already gone home, and that angers Nao. That frustrates Kakeru, who throws away the reports he had already collected. Then he says that he and Machi are half-siblings, children of the same father. He is the son of one of his mistresses, and Machi is the daughter of his official wife, and since he is older than Machi, he was designated as his father's successor. But as he grew older, he grew tired of the rule-filled world he was being subjected to and threw a tantrum, and his mother came to her senses and stopped fighting for the inheritance. Then, Kakeru thinks that his sister Machi is going through a lot of stress, because she is the new one designated to be head of the family, and that must be driving her crazy, and she destroys things. Yuki feels identified with Kakeru's family problems and also throws all the reports they had collected, because at the end of the day you can't choose your parents, just as they can't choose their children. Kakeru knows this well, and that is why he lives carefree, because in a way he can live in an environment like that, and if you take it with a smile, it becomes much easier. When leaving, Yuki goes to his house to ask his mother for a signature to buy a cell phone, and to his surprise, she worries a little about him, still he smiles just as Kakeru told him. The next day, Machi apologizes to the student council and promises not to do it again, but that worries Yuki, because if she doesn't vent her stress, it will stay trapped inside her, and asks her to talk to them when she needs. This impresses Kakeru and Kimi, who say that he is a prince, and Yuki remembers that he had to go to his classroom to vote for the play. Turns out, he will be the fairy godmother, Hana will be Cinderella, Tohru will be the evil stepsister, and Kyo will be the prince. Kyo immediately gets angry and refuses to participate, so Yotani sends Tohru to calm him down. After that, Yuki goes to the council room and gets locked in the storage room, so Nao and Kimi run to ask for help. Yuki is fine at first, but then black paint falls on him, and he gets a little stressed. But Machi breaks the door lock with a chair and frees Yuki, before he panics because he is locked in a dark room with black paint on him. He goes out to get some air because he is nauseous and tells Kakeru that he has painful memories and he had never told anyone about them. In the past, Yuki's family gave him to Aikido from a very young age because the rat has been very important to the head of the family since ancient times, so they brought them together to become good friends, and at the beginning it was like that. Aikido had his tantrums and Shigure comforted Aikido from time to time, but there came a day when Aikido completely lost it and said that since he was immersed in darkness, Yuki had to be the same too. Because of this, Aikido began to get it into his head that no one loved him and that there was no point in trying to stay away. One night, Yuki ran into Kyo, who was not allowed to attend the Zodiac banquet. Kyo was a very angry child and yelled at Yuki that he hated him because it was all the rat's fault, and when Yuki tried to ask Ayam for help, he ignored him, so he started believing Aikido's lies. Yuki's mother was so snobbish that she changed him to school because she wanted him to be superior to the other Zodiacs, so Yuki found himself once again isolated from the others. It was very difficult for him to make friends because he was afraid of rejection, but one day some kids invited him to play soccer and he made his first friends. Some of them were even Somas, and they used to sneak out to play, but one day he wasn't careful enough and a girl hugged him and he turned into a rat. Because of this, Hattori had to erase the memories of all of his friends and he was alone again. So Aikido took the opportunity to ingrain his words in Yuki, reaching the point where he thought that his life had no meaning and that no one would regret if he disappeared. One night, Yuki escaped from the estate and runs aimlessly despite his discomfort from the cold, and by chance he sees Kyoko, Tohru's mom. She was crying desperately to some police officers because Tohru was lost. This showed him that there are parents who love their children very much, and he remembered seeing a cute girl crying while he was running. So he ran to look for her, and little by little he took her to her home. Helping someone showed Yuki that not everything is darkness. For a moment there was light, but it didn't last long. Yuki returns to the present and Kakeru asks him what he was remembering that made him so melancholy. Yuki says that after his family abandoned him with the head family, he grew up believing that he only lived in darkness until he met Tohru for a moment, but the light did not last and the darkness and insecurities consumed him again for many years until he saw Tohru again. She saved him twice without knowing it. She never rejected him and has accepted everything about him for Yuki. Tohru is like the sky, so close and so far at the same time. She is like a mother. At first, Yuki only saw Tohru as a classmate who was having a hard time living in a tent in the middle of the forest, but later, when she told him that she wanted to be his friend again, even if her memory was erased, it was the first time he felt accepted. Then her kindness and motherly love began to confuse Yuki, until he saw her running towards Kyo, the night she saw his true form. From that night on, she started to look like a woman to him, and he tried to change the maternal love he felt towards her, but every time he flirted with her like a boy in love, he felt wrong. So Yuki accepted that his love for her will always be like a son to his mother, and Kakeru says that there are many couples who have a relationship like that and suggests that Yuki doesn't want to get between Kyo and Tohru. But Yuki says that he has seen how they see each other when no one is watching. There is love in their eyes, and it is something very different from what he feels for her. So he wants to take advantage of the second opportunity that Tohru gave him to seek light that takes him completely out of the darkness. Finally, Kakeru asks why he doesn't tell Tohru, and he says that he doesn't want to burden her with his problems, and he told them because he knows he won't be affected by it. Meanwhile, at home, Tohru tells Shigure about the Cinderella play, and he bursts out laughing when he finds out that Kyo is the prince and plans to bring a video camera to record it. This embarrasses Kyo. He begins to annoy Tohru, and when Yuki arrives, he tells Kyo alone that his hat now belongs to Tohru, since it was Kyo's hat in the first place, and Kyo is angry to learn that it was Yuki, the one who helped her when she was a little girl. The next day, Ayam and Mine go to school at Yuki's request. They will be in charge of making the costumes for the play, and Mine tells Hana that she will make Cinderella's dress however she wants, that is dark. Tohru has a lot of trouble adjusting to the role of evil stepsister, but she promises that she will get better. That catches the attention of Yuki, who goes to look for Kyo and asks him if he enjoys making Tohru worry, and Kyo loses it. He starts yelling at him that a spoiled prince like him wouldn't understand. He had loving parents and is his Zodiac loved and respected, unlike him who has been hated all his life. At that moment, Yuki runs into Machi and another girl. The girl tells Yuki that he would have been the perfect prince, but Machi says that she does not believe that Yuki is a prince, and she leaves, leaving Yuki speechless. In the afternoon, Kaya returns to the classroom to get his things and finds Tohru waiting for him, and he feels guilty for worrying her and understands what Yuki wanted to tell him. Tohru shows him the new script that she had rewritten for him, and he says that he will rehearse it, but he gets so close to her that Tohru turns scarlet. The day of the play has arrived, and Hiro is surprised that its name is sorta Cinderella, and Haru explains to him that it is because it is not completely Cinderella, but rather something of Cinderella, and he turns on his video recorder to film everything. The play begins, and the differences are obvious, with Hana playing a Cinderella of few words who loves her stepsister, who is a kind girl. The fairy godmother also causes commotion in the theater, because Yuki doesn't look like a fairy, but rather an angel. He is willing to fulfill Cinderella's wishes, but she asks for impossible things like burning the castle to avoid going to the ball. So Yuki gives her a beautiful black dress, and Hana has go to the ball there. Kyo plays his role as an apathetic prince who refuses to get a girlfriend, although his best friend Yutani forces him to say his lines anyway, and it soon becomes clear that the prince is interested in the stepsisters, but the show must go on, and he and Hana are forced to respect their roles. In the end, Kyo refuses to ask Hana to marry him, as she asks him who he really wants. Kyo doesn't stop looking at Tohru, but he goes out of character and says that he is resigned and he has no future, so he is ready to be locked up. Finally, Yuki as a fairy godmother appears and asks Hana her wish, and she decides to open a yakiniku shop for her and her stepsister, and Yuki accepts and tells Kyo that he will not grant him a wish. If he wants something, he must fight for it, earning applause from the audience. After that, everyone goes backstage to change clothes, and Kyo does it quickly because he sees Hana chatting very animatedly with Kazuma, and he doesn't want her to be his stepmother. He asks Kazuma not to marry her, and he takes it like a childish tantrum without understanding what Kyo was referring to. Tohru also changes her clothes and can't stop thinking about how she told Kyo that she didn't want him to be locked up, and how Yutani seemed to talk to Kurino in her lines. So she's going to ask Momiji to make her a DVD copy, and Momiji says that he will give it to Kurino because he can see him in the Soma estate. Then Haru and Momiji say that they have to go to their places in their classroom, and Haru can't stop worrying about Kiza. That makes Hiro angry, and he asks him to stop being so nice to everyone because that made Rin sad. Hiro immediately realizes that he screwed up and tries to take it back, but Haru didn't realize it and thinks that Kiro likes Rin, and that makes Kiza sad. Meanwhile, Kakeru and Yuki go on patrols and see Machi being by Yuki's fans. Because they found out that Machi said that Yuki is not a prince. Yuki wants to help her, but Kakeru says it will be worse if he gets in the way, and besides, Machi has to stand up for herself and leaves. Yuki's fans scold Machi and ask her again what she thinks of Yuki, and she reiterates that he is not a prince, he is an airhead and seems lonely. That leaves Yuki and her fans speechless, but luckily Kakeru and Miki loudly inform that Yuki will have a free photo session at the school gate with the girls who arrive first, and the fans run away, leaving Machi alone. After the school festival, Kimi suggests going somewhere to celebrate the next day. Everyone agrees even though Machi says she won't go, but Yuki tries to integrate her and asks her where she would like to go, but Machi isn't interested in answering, so Yuki says that he would like to look at things through her eyes, and Kakeru bursts out laughing because it sounded so romantic. At home, Machi feels a little bad since she feels that she is the only one who is not moving forward. Before, Yuki didn't really smile, but now he does it more often, and she is still the same dull and quiet girl as always. The next day, Machi goes to the meeting point and runs into Yuki, who arrived first. This surprises her so much that she trips and all her things fall, and Yuki sees that she framed the autumn leaf that he brought her as a souvenir, and that makes him very happy even though she says it's not important, but in reality it is, because now the autumn leaf is a bookmark. At that moment, Kakeru arrives and stares at them because they are both very strange, and Yuki says that when he sees the bookmark she made, he deduces that her favorite color is red, and Machi is surprised to know that Yuki is interested in his teammates. Days later, Kyo and Tohru go to Kazuma's house to spend the new year there, since this year Yuki decided to attend the Zodiac banquet, and Shigure did not trust Kyo and Tohru to leave them alone at home. At Kazuma's house, there is also Rin, whom Tohru rushes to hug, but Rin avoids her, and Kazuma tells Tohru that Rin and Kyo don't get along. Meanwhile, at the banquet, Akito is happy to have Yuki there, and says that he forgives him for distancing himself and asks to return more often to the Soma estate. But Yuki says that he forgives him too, which leaves Akito speechless. Then Yuki adds that he frees him from the blame for his failures. Yuki looks at peace with himself and looks at Akito with distance. That look makes Akito loses it, and he hits him with a bottle in the face. Fortunately, Kurino grabs Akito and does not allow him to hurt Yuki anymore. Ayam sees the on Yuki's face and gets so worried that he thinks Yuki is down in his arms and asks Hattori to heal him. Alone, Hattori heals Yuki's wound. He also frees him from the guilt of a few years ago, since he knows that Hattori felt guilty for erasing the memory of his friends, but Hattori asks him not to worry too much. At midnight, Kyo tells Tohru stories about his childhood. For example, he didn't like Rin spending time in the dojo because he thought she would steal Kazuma, and she thinks he was cute. So she hopes as a New Year's wish to be able to break the Zodiac curse and for everyone to be happy. Meanwhile, in another room, Haru hugs a sleeping Rin at the Soma estate. A new school term has started, and Yotani looks more melancholic than usual, and Tohru remembers the events of New Year. It turns out that Rin realized that someone slept with her, and Tohru says that maybe it was Haru. So Rin asks her not name him because they are already done. After that, Yuki and Momiji came and told Tohru about their exploits. Yuki confronted Higo, and Tohru is proud of him, and also of Momiji because he managed to give the DVD to Kurino. Meanwhile, at the Soma estate, Akito is emotionally weak and tries to keep Kurino by her side, since according to her, only he has her as a priority. But she is wrong, because Kurino waits for her to fall asleep to go watch the DVD that Tohru sent him, and upon hearing Otani's lines in the play, he knows that she wants to see him, and he does too. But he has an internal conflict, because he swore never to leave Akito. The next day, Kurino calls Shigure's house because he wants to talk to Tohru. Shigure is surprised by the call and asks him things that he has been suspecting for a long time. Later, Tohru comes home and Shigure asks her to do some errands, and she goes out again, but finds Kurino in a nearby park. The first thing Tohru notices when Kurino approaches is that the birds escape from him, instead of being attracted to him, since all Zodiacs have an affinity with the races of animals they represent. Then Kurino does something that leaves Tohru speechless. He hugs her, and the transformation does not happen, and finally, Kurino confesses that his curse has been broken many years ago. Tohru asks him how he broke the curse, but Kurino doesn't know. It happened out of nowhere, and he just came to return the DVD to Tohru and tell her that he won't see Otani again because he must stay with Akito. Suddenly, Kurino starts crying and says that he wants to see Otani. He only spoke to her twice, but it was enough to fall in love with her. He fell in love on his own. Without the spirit of the rooster interfering in his heart, he is free to love whoever he wants. But for that same reason, he chose to stay with Akito. It turns out that years ago, when the curse was broken, Kurino cried with happiness because a new world was opening and cried with sadness for not being able to fly anymore. But the one who felt the loss the most was Akito. She was inconsolable. She was just a child, which her world breaking, so Kurino swore to love her and stay by her side. Shigure suspected that he had broken the curse a long time ago because his spirits forced them to obey and worship Akito. But Kurino does it out of pity, and that is why he decided to stay with her too, because Akito knows that the others are on her side out of obligation. To Kurino, Akito is just a broken and sad girl, and Kurino decides to tell Tohru the mayor's secret of the Soma family. Akito is a girl. That surprises Tohru, since she always saw Akito wearing men's clothes. When Akito was conceived, Shigure, Hattori, Ayam, and Kurino cried because their spirits recognized the god calling them with their bond of Ren Soma. Akito's mother decided to raise her daughter as a male, so only the four of them know that she is a girl. Ren is a problematic and mentally unstable woman. For her, the bond between Akito and the Zodiacs is not love, it is something wrong and unnatural, and she does not stop making fun of Akito for that, so the fights between the two are endless. For Ren, true love is the one she and her husband Akira had, and she constantly reminds Akito of it, which is why Akito protects the bond between her and the Zodiacs. Kurino says that although Akito is his god, she is also a girl, and when his bond with Akito was broken, he realized that Ren was right, that bond is unnatural. But for Akito, he swore to be by her side. So it is impossible for his love for Yotani to exist because he is already with another woman. For the first time, Tohru is left without words to comfort someone. She knows that Kurino is sacrificing himself for Akito, and that hurts her too, and she stays in that park crying until Hana and her little brother find her and take her to their home. Hana tells Tohru that she heard her waves crying and that's why she went to look for her. Then Tohru says that Yotani's Kurino and Soma's Kurino are the same person, and he can't be with Yotani because he must be with someone else and should ignore his feelings. Tohru feels like she has failed two people because Kurino needs comfort and she didn't know how to give it, and Yotani wanted to see Kurino so much and she couldn't get it. Then Hana says that Kurino is the same as her. They put other people's feelings first, and that is something that scares Hana. She feels that Tohru takes so much pain from other people that one day she will stop smiling. Suddenly, Yotani enters and hugs Tohru, telling her not to worry about her anymore, and that she fell in love with Kurino because he is like to Tohru and she doesn't want her to be sad. Then Megumi tells them that perhaps today's actions will not have immediate consequences, but they will in the future, because after the darkest night, the sun always rises. Meanwhile, Rin sneaks into Soma Estate, ready to look for the information she needs to break the curse, but she is discovered by Ren and she says that she can help her get what she wants. The next day, Tohru returns home and is warmly welcomed by Kyo, Yuki, and Shigure and realizes how important she is to the three of them, and her energies are renewed to figure out how to break the curse. That night, Akito dreams about the time Shigure gave her a red flower saying that he loves her of the Zodiacs. He is the one who cares most about her. The next day, Tohru wants to ask Shigure about Akito, but she doesn't have the courage and instead tells Shigure that she is making paper flowers because her class is in charge of decorating the third-year graduation ceremony, and Shigure makes a red flower and keeps it. At school, all the flowers Yuki made were stolen by his fan club, and Yotani tells Kyo to make more, but he doesn't want to because he already made his quota of flowers. But it turns out that his were also stolen by other girls, because according to the girls, when a boy gives a flower to a girl, it is a symbol of the giving of his love. Botani gets angry because several flowers are missing, so she and Hana go hunt down the thieves. Meanwhile, Yuki does his patrols and runs into Machi. She's almost out of breath from looking for him everywhere, and surprisingly, she just wanted to say hello, but since she couldn't find him, she took it as a personal challenge and looked for him all over the school. Yuki is touched by this, and she rudely gives him a poorly made paper flower that she made, making them blush. In the afternoon, Tohru and Kyo continue waiting for their friends since they had to make sure that no more flowers were stolen. Tohru is melancholic and asks Kyo what he would do if he knew that there was a Zodiac that already broke the curse, but Kyo says that he doesn't like to think about impossible things. That makes Tohru sad because she can't tell him the truth and can't look him in the eyes because she knows she will cry, and that worries Kyo, and he tries to apologize for making her sad. Unfortunately, their moment is interrupted by Yotani and the others, saying that the thieves will make the missing flowers to complete the quota. That night, Shigure goes to visit Akito and gives her the red paper flower that he made in the morning, and she asks him if he remembers what he once told her, but he pretends that he doesn't remember, and that hurts her. The next day, Shigure goes to a restaurant with his editor, and by chance, several select members of the Soma family were also there, including Shigure's parents and Akito, but Shigure refuses to go greet her because she is with Kurino. Then, Shigure remembers the phone chat he had with Kurino 2 days ago. After confirming his suspicions that Kureno was no longer a Zodiac, his hatred for him grew, and Kureno asked him not to abandon Akito because they both know that she only wants to be with Shigure, but she can't. That night, Shigure goes to visit Akito, and she jealously asks him if he has already slept with his editor, and he says that he doesn't sleep with all the women he knows, and that awakens anger in Akito. She complains that he slept with Ren a few years ago, and he counter-argues that she already punished him by kicking him out of the Soma estate, and reminds her that of the Zodiacs, he cares for her the most. That shocks Akito because she thought that Shigure had forgotten it, but Shigure returns to the fray and says that he only slept with Ren because she slept with Kureno. That makes Akito angrier, and she says that he knows that she has to take care of the bond with the Zodiacs, but Shigure is tired of the same old chatter and tries to leave, but she kisses him, and that is something that Shigure can ignore because of the Zodiacs. The only one who truly loves her is Shigure, and he swore to be with her forever. The next day, Tohru goes to Rin's school, but her classmates says that she hasn't been coming to class. Sometime later, although spring is near, it is snowing, and that bothers Machi, so to release anger, she breaks a box of chalk. Her classmates go to the council to tell them what's happening with Machi and tell them that there is a rumor that she tried to eliminate her little brother. Suddenly, Machi arrives at the council room and realizes that they already know about the rumor, and she prefers not to defend herself against it because she knows that no one would believe her, and she goes to her house. Yuki is very worried about Machi, and Kakeru realizes that, so he says that they should go see her. But Yuki says that that is indecent because she lives alone, but Kakeru doesn't care about those rules. Plus, he is her brother. When they arrive, Machi doesn't want to let them in, but Kakeru comes in anyway and starts cleaning the mess that is Machi's house as if he was already used to it. Yuki also helps clean and tells her that he knows why the snow puts her in a bad mood. That shocks Machi, and Yuki says that what bothers Machi is the perfectly piled snow, and she says that she was raised to be the perfect heir. But when her little brother was born, he was designated as the new heir, and her mother said that she was relieved that Machi was not the heir because she was a boring girl with no decision of her own. That broke Machi because she was raised that way. She had to be perfect, so now everything that is perfect bothers her, and the worst came when on a snowy night, she wanted to put an extra blanket on her little brother. Her parents thought she wanted to suffocate him, so she was exiled to live in an apartment alone. Yuki is moved by the story and pats her head, saying that the next time they see snow piled perfectly, he will help her make many footprints to break that perfection. Suddenly, a sound breaks the romantic atmosphere. It is Kakeru's cell phone, who was behind the wall, trying not to interrupt them in laments because he thought they were about to kiss. The next day at the student council meeting, Machi sees a box of new chalks and Yuki breaks one so that they are not perfect. And that shows Machi that his words yesterday were sincere, and she wishes for the first time that it will snow again to make footprints together. Hours later, Yuki escapes from graduation preparations as he has to go see Motoko. She is graduating tomorrow, and she wants to confess her feelings to Yuki because she knows that she will not see him again after graduating. She tells him that she loves him, but that's not the important thing, and she thanks him for being the reason for the happiness she had since she saw him for the first time, so she hopes that Yuki can achieve that same happiness. Yuki feels flattered to receive such good wishes, so she gladly accepts her feelings, and this is the best thing he could say to Motoko, because that makes her very happy and puts an end to her high school years. Graduation day arrives and takes place normally, and even now is encouraged to say goodbye to Motoko, wishing her to have a good life, since he is in love with her, and that is why he saw Yuki as his rival. Meanwhile, Hiro's little sister is born, and her name is Hinata, and his mother wants him to hold her in his arms, but he doesn't want to because he will turn into a sheep. Months later, while Hiro is taking care of his little sister, he hears his mom say that Rin is still hospitalized, but he feels that that is not true. On the other hand, Yuki is also worried about Rin and asks Haru about her, but he says that he knows nothing because he is keeping the distance he promised her, but he worries when he hears that maybe Rin's hospitalization is a lie. Haru goes to the Soma estate and runs into Hiro and Kiza, surprised at how high they are, and Hiro can't take it anymore and confesses to him the truth. Rin's wounds on her back are from when Akito pushed her off the balcony. Akito had found out about their secret relationship and punished Rin. Haru is shocked, and that's not all. Hiro says that before disappearing, Rin was looking for how to break the curse to free them both, and that's why she broke up with him. Haru turns into Black Haru and leaves to find Akito. Then Hiro apologizes to Kiza because it's his fault that Akito hurts her too, and she cries because she never realized the guilt that Hiro carried. On the other hand, Black Haru confronts Akito and asks why she pushed Rin off the balcony, but Akito plays dumb and says that never happened. Then Black Haru asks her where Rin is, and she continues pretending not to know, and Black Haru loses it and yells at her that he loves Rin, and when he starts to get aggressive, Hirino enters the room. Hirino says that Tohru took Rin to the hospital, and she's out of danger and scolds Akito. Even though she is a god, she is not allowed to do certain things, and Akito feels betrayed. Black Haru loses it when Kureno says that Rin was locked in the cat's cottage and almost hits Akito, but he holds back at the last moment because he feels guilty for having gotten Rin into all this. He knew that Akito would be angry if he found out about their love, but even so he refused to leave Rin's side. Akito goes crazy because of Kureno's betrayal and screams that she was born to be loved. That's what her father said, but now everyone is betraying her. Later, one of Akito's employees scolds Kureno, saying that the Zodiacs belong to Akito. The Zodiacs must live and die for Akito. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Rin wakes up and runs away while she remembers how she got there. It turns out that a few months ago, she was looking for Kureno after seeing him talking to Tohru, but she ran into Ren, and she lied to her that she knew how to break the curse, and would tell her if she brought her the box of her husband's ashes that Akito keeps in her room. But Rin was discovered by Akito, and she took her to the cat's cottage and cut her hair so that she would no longer be a pretty girl. Returning to the present, Rin continues walking weakly through the city, but she faints and dreams that she is still locked up. But suddenly, she sees Haru and he asks her if she has finished her long journey, and she smiles and tells him yes because she thinks it's a dream before she dies. Then Haru carries her in his arms and she realizes that she is alive and Haru is with her. He apologizes for not having seen her pain and asks her to let him help her when she needs it, and this time she accepts that Haru is her home and he hugs her tightly. Days later, Ayam asks Mine if she will stay with him even though he is cursed forever, and she says that she chooses how to be happy and chooses to be by his side. On the other hand, Hattori is with Mayo and she asks him if he wants to travel somewhere, but he says no. And at school, Yuki can't stop thinking about Machi and wants to tell her the truth, but they are interrupted. Meanwhile, at the Soma estate, Shigure scolds Akito to leave her room and warns her that if she doesn't change, people and their feelings will change, and he leaves. The next day at school, the girls have a new prince to be obsessed with, Momiji. He has grown up in recent months and is a handsome boy, although he is still a little childish, and his closeness to Tohru makes people think that they are a couple. He tells her that he is happy to be taller because he is now seen as a man and wants to act like one, and together with Tohru, they organize a big lunch at Shigure's house. Meanwhile, Shigure goes to the Soma estate again to see Akito, and Hattori scolds him for being rude to her, even though he is older, and he says that he knows that he is twisted, and he doesn't plan to be nice to Akito, because she has him and Kureno to do that. Plus, he doesn't want Akito to think that he is her father or something like that. At Shigure's house, Momiji wants to make a big barbecue for everyone, but there is not a meat grill, so Yuki suggests changing the menu to a curry and the others agree. So Momiji goes to Kyo's room to tell him to come down, but not only that, Momiji tells Kyo that if he keeps giving up on Tohru, someone will take her from him. And that someone could be him, because now that he grew up, he doesn't plan to give up on his dreams even if they are impossible. Later, Shigure comes home and sees everyone eating curry, and thinks that maybe he should have dreamed about Tohru many years ago. Being the husband of someone like her would have been easier, but he dreamed about Akito. And now everyone is moving on, except her. At night, Akito has a horrible feeling, and suddenly she feels that something inside her is breaking, and it is Momiji's bond that has been broken. Akito runs to Momiji's house and sees that he is crying and immediately asks him not to leave her. Now that Momiji sees her clearly, he realizes that Akito is someone pathetic who only begs for love and says that tomorrow they will talk, and closes the door in her face. The next day, the Zodiacs notice something strange about Momiji and don't know what it is. Kyo, as always, goes to the roof to hang out and finds a melancholic Momiji. He tells him that his curse has been broken, but even then he won't get what he wants, because Tohru would be happier if Kyo's curse was broken, but Kyo doesn't want to think about it, because there is a secret that is drowning him. Later, Momiji goes to talk to Akito, and she tries to beg him once not to leave, warning him that if he leaves he has nowhere to go because his family is something he will never have back. But Momiji knows it, he is now free, but he has lost the bond that united him to the other Zodiacs, so he is alone. The next day, Momiji changes his route to go to school to be able to greet his mother. She tells him that they will soon go on a summer trip and asks him about his family. That makes Momiji a little sad, but he quickly tells himself that he will go on a summer trip with the family he creates in the future, and says goodbye to his mom, smiling. Days later, Tohru finds out that Rin is at Kazuma's house and cries with happiness because she is fine. Shigure also stops by to see her and tells her that she risked herself for nothing. Ren doesn't know how to break the curse, but he believes that all the Zodiacs will be freed eventually. That is heard by Tohru, who asks him crying what eventually means, because Kyo will be locked up after graduation and the date is close. Unfortunately, Shigure does not know this and cruelly says that all the Zodiacs know about Kyo's destiny. But they say nothing because Kyo's role is to make the other Zodiacs feel good. The Zodiacs are monsters, but it could have been worse. It could be the cat. Tohru for the first time gets angry and stops Shigure's chatter, and he asks her how he feels about Kyo, and she runs away. Tohru runs through the streets remembering that Rin once asked her who was special to her, and she almost said Kyo, when the most important person to her should be her mom. Because the day she died, she swore to keep her memories in her heart, but ever since she met Kyo, he has been making a place for himself in her heart too. At that moment, Kyo runs into her and worries when he sees her crying and pats her head saying that it is good to cry and she doesn't know what to do because she knows that in the future, she will have to say goodbye to someone. The next day is the anniversary of Kyoko's, so Kyo goes earlier to pay his respects and meets Tohru's grandfather and asks him why he calls Tohru with the name of Kyoko, and he says that he decided to do it when he realized that Tohru could break if someone forgot her mother, and that small action comforted her. Meanwhile, Tohru goes to visit Rin before going to the cemetery, and Kagura hides from her because she feels like a loser knowing that Tohru loves Kyo and he loves her, but that worries Kazuma and says that he hopes Tohru loves Kyo for him and not out of pity, like the former cat's companion, his grandfather. Tohru goes up to see Rin and she asks her why she loves the cat, and Tohru can't take it anymore and breaks down crying, confessing that she wants to break Soma's curse for Kyo. She always said she wanted to help all the Zodiacs, but in reality she doesn't want Kyo to be taken away from her, because he is the most precious person to her. All this is heard by Kagura, who enters the room and slaps Tohru in the face, what Tohru said should say to Kyo, not Rin. Meanwhile, Kyo continues talking to Tohru's grandfather, and he tells him that when Tohru's father, people said that Tohru was nothing like Katsuya, and that affected Tohru, and how Kyoko was very depressed by the Katsuya's. Tohru began to act and talk like him. In the afternoon, Kyo asks Tohru if she looks like her dad, and she says no physically, but they talk the same way. But Tohru starts to shake and confesses to Kyo that it's all a farce. She started talking like her father so that her mother would stop being sad. At the end of the day, Tohru was just a girl desperate to have her mother back. Then Kyo comforted her by saying that he is sure that her mother knew the truth, and that is the truth because Kyoko told Kyo. He says so truthfully that Tohru hugs him tightly, crying, and transforms into a cat. After that, Tohru takes him to her room and shows him the photo of her father, and when she is about to confess her feelings, she feels the ghost of her mother looking at her, and Kyo also feels a presence that makes him remember a memory that he had suppressed. Kyo dreams about Kyoko and how she said she wanted to be alive for the people who loved her, but the dream turns into a nightmare when his mother appears reminding him that should not go outside because it is dangerous, and then he sees Tohru's mother dead in the street. Meanwhile, Shigure goes to see Ren and says that he found out that she sent Rin to get Akira's box when he told her that she should look for it. Ren says that she will do everything to have Akira back since she is the only one who loved him, the only one who saved him from loneliness. Although his family opposed their marriage, his love for her was stronger until Akito was born and she was displaced from his heart. When Shigure, Ayame, Hattori, and Kureno found out that Ren would raise Akito as a man, Shigure felt pity for the woman, and that's why years later he slept with her to feel what it would have been like to be with Akito raised as a woman. That's not bothers Ren so much since she is still obsessed with Akira. Shigure says that she should have that man's ashes, so his ghost will stop tormenting Akito. On top of everything, Ren's hatred increased when they did not tell her that Akira, and from that day on, she repeated to Akito that her bond with the Zodiacs was not natural. Her first victory was sleep with Shigure, and the second when Yuki left the Soma estate. But Akito always trusted that everyone would come back to her in the end. Currently, Akito remembers Ren's words and feels desperate because the bonds are getting weaker every day. Suddenly, Ren enters with a knife in her hand and demands that Akito return Akira's box. Akito is so tired of everything that she throws the box into the air, and Ren opens it and sees that it is empty. It turns out that Akito always knew that her father loved Ren more than her. He told her before The employees were loyal to Akito, and one of them gave her an empty box saying that Akira's soul was there and would always be by her side as long as she kept the box. Akito takes advantage of the shock to attack her mother, but she stops because she senses another broken bond, Hiro's. His mother finds him crying and he says that he feels many mixed things, and she hugs her children saying that it is normal, goodbyes are always bittersweet. Akito goes out for air to recover from a new loss, and Kureno hugs her and tells her that it is not too late to change, but Akito does not know how to live any other way because that is what they teach her, and she is also tired of kindness from Kureno, because deep down she always knew that he stayed with her out of pity, and she stabs him as punishment and runs away. That same night, Tohru wants to confess her feelings to Kyo, but he stops her and asks her if she loves him. She blushes and he realizes that it is true and regrets having come to live at Shigure's house. He tries to leave, but Tohru stops him and he breaks down and confesses that he could have stopped her mother's, but he didn't, and tells her how he met her. It turns out that one day, Kyo met Kyoko because his orange hair caught her attention, which was the same as hers. And from that day on, he saw her every day after she got off work, and he got to know her better. He knew about Tohru's father, and Kyoko even showed him a photo of Tohru, telling him that she was her treasure. But one night, he decided to go visit them to meet Tohru personally. But he found Kyoko crying because Tohru was lost, and he swore to her that he was going to find her and protect her, and ran to look for her. He looked for her all night, but he didn't find her. And when he ran into Kyoko, she was looking for him and brought his blue cap. She thought Kyo had saved Tohru, but it was Yuki, since he got Kyo's cap that night, and Kyo felt a fierce hatred for Yuki because he had everything and now he was stealing some of his new life. Then Kyoko told him that there were no good or bad people. Maybe he thought those things about Yuki because he needed to hate something, but that only angered Kyo, and he told her that he would never see her again, but Kyoko told him that she would hold his promise. Kyo saw Kyoko again years later. Just before the accident, he saw that a car was going to hit her and almost saved her from it. But if he did it, she would fall on him and he would transform into a cat. So in those few seconds, he preferred to keep his secret instead of saving her. And the worst thing is that in the last seconds of her life, he felt that she recognized him and her eyes said that she would not forgive him. After that, the guilt was so big that Kazuma took him to the mountains to heal his heart, but instead, Kyo became obsessed with the idea that everything bad in his life was Yuki's fault, so he managed to suppress the memory of Kyoko's accident and return to the city. The first thing he did was see Aikido, since he should be scolded for going to the mountains without permission. But instead, Aikido made a bet about his freedom, and Kyo accepted and went to Shigure's house. Much to his surprise, Tohru was there and he pretended not to know her and refused to be her friend, but unfortunately he fell in love with her, and when he saw the cap in her room, the memory of what he had done came back. He wants Tohru to hate him for what he did, but Tohru surprises him by saying that she doesn't believe her mom thought those things before she died, and besides, she can't change what she feels. She loves him deeply, and that makes Kyo angry because he would prefer that she hate him and run away. At that moment, Yuki goes out to look for him because he had been listening to what happened, and he leaves Tohru alone, not realizing that Aikido has arrived and still has the knife. Aikido reproaches her that because of her, everyone pushed her away, and Tohru sees Aikido for the first time as she really is, a girl scared of being alone in the world. Tohru tries to hug her, but Aikido hits her with a knife and blames her because the Zodiacs prefer her, the pure girl, and Tohru understands that Aikido has always been separated from the rest. Since she was born, they told her that she was special, and she was never part of the Zodiacs because she is above them, and that is why Aikido wants to keep her bonds with the Zodiacs, because they are the only bonds she has. Then Tohru says that they both thought the same, since she wanted the bonds to be eternal. She wanted to keep her mother in her heart, but when she fell in love with Kyo, she realized that feelings change and so do people. The idea of changing is unacceptable to Aikido, so she flees to the forest in the middle of the storm, and Tohru follows her and asks her to try to create new bonds, but Aikido doesn't know how to do it, and Tohru offers to be her friend. Although Aikido distrusts her and says that Tohru will walk away when she cries or screams, but Tohru assures her that will not be the case. Aikido realizes her sincerity and almost hugs her, but they were on a cliff and the rain loosened the ground and just crumbled, and Tohru fell off the cliff. Aikido starts screaming for help and is heard by Yuki and Shigure. She tells them what happened, so Yuki runs down the ground to look for her at the bottom of the cliff, while Shigure calls Hattori to tell him what happened, and he tells him about what Aikido did to Kurino. At that moment, Kyo arrives and hears about what happened to Tohru and runs to look for her, and Yuki tells him not to move her head because she is very hurt, and Kyo starts to cry because he thinks that he will lose another important person in his life. Tohru feels Kyo's tears and tries to tell him that she hopes he doesn't stay stuck thinking about her. She loves him too much and wants him to keep moving forward even if she isn't by his side. Her desire to talk to him is so big that she wakes up and tells Kyo that everything is fine, and he says that he understands her and kisses her. Everyone spends a night of worry because of Kurino and Tohru. The next day, Aikido sneaks out of the Soma estate and goes to visit Kurino and apologizes for everything she has done to him, and he is so kind that he accepts her apology. After that, Aikido goes to visit Tohru and is surprised that she was waiting for her. Meanwhile, Shigure talks to Hattori and says that it seems like Aikido's spree stabbing was therapeutic, and Hattori says that his plan is going well, and Shigure admits that he feels a little remorseful for the things he did to get to this point. Days later, the members from the student council ask Yuki about Tohru, and he says that she is in the hospital. Then Kimi asks him what their relationship is, and Kakeru tries to explain that Tohru is Yuki's mom, and he turns red. At that moment, Yutne and Hana enter the room and ask Yuki which hospital Tohru is in. Later, they go to visit Tohru and she gives them a summary of everything that happened, and when they leave, they run into Aikido. She tells them that she is to blame for Tohru's injuries and apologizes to Yotani because she hurt Kirino and hugs her in sympathy. Later, Yotani goes to see Kirino and realizes that she polished her meetings like they were diamonds, when in reality, to Kirino they were barely a coal in his 26 years. He's surprised to see Yotani and says that he still must do something for Aikido. He must leave because the guilt that Aikido feels is big, and Yotani says that she will support him and accompany him on the trip he takes because this time, she wants to be the protagonist in Kirino's life, and that makes him happy. On the other hand, Shigure suffers from having food from the convenience store since he had become accustomed to Tohru's home-cooked food. When he and Yuki get home, he realizes that he also forgets to lock the door, and that's why everyone comes and goes as they please. Suddenly, they hear something and Yuki goes up to see Kyo, who has returned after many days. He knows that Kyo has many things that torment him, but that does not give him the right to hurt Tohru. When Yuki sees Kyo packing his things, he realizes that he wants to run away like he always does, and Kyo says that he doesn't deserve to stay by Tohru's side because he couldn't save either his mother or her like Yuki does, and that makes Yuki angry because Kyo has always invited him and he envies Kyo. So he starts punching him to make him see reason and asks him to appreciate his talents. He did save Tohru. Thanks to him, Tohru smiles like never before and is happy again. That is something that Yuki couldn't do. That makes Kyo reconsider and runs off to the hospital. But first he decides to go to the Soma estate. He has to solve this situation before starting something with Tohru. He enters his father's house and tells his father that he will not to be locked up. He will live life outside with someone special. That drives Kyo's father crazy, and he starts yelling at him all the horrible things that he used to yell at Kyo's mother, and Kyo remembers that his mother's depression started because of his father's complaints since she suffered because no one accepted her son. Then Kyo's father threatens him by saying that you will have him caged today, but it is a vain threat because Aikido already gave the order to destroy the cat's cottage, and Kyo is now free to live as he wants. Kyo is not affected by his father's madness and tells him that from now on he will live his life to the fullest and goes to the hospital. Meanwhile, Yuki receives a call from Machi. She wants to give him something, and that makes Yuki's heart race and tells her to wait for him where she is. He wants to tell her something. On the way to the hospital, doubts assail Kyo, and he wonders if Tohru will accept him after everything that happened. But when Tohru sees him, she runs away and Kyo chases after her, reaffirming what he already knows: he loves her. Tohru thinks that Kyo doesn't want to be with her, and that's why she runs away. She had planned to smile when she saw him, but her heart breaks just thinking that she can't be by his side. Fortunately, Kyo is faster than her, and he quickly catches up with her and asks for her forgiveness for hurting her. He says that it will be the last time he makes her cry and asks for one last chance to show her how much he loves her. This shocks Tohru, and she asks him if he would allow her to be by his side, and Kyo smiles at her saying that he loves her before wiping away her tears and kissing her. Then Kyo teases her by saying that this is their second kiss, and Tohru turns red because she doesn't remember the first one. Kyo wants to hug Tohru, but he knows that he will turn into a cat and being with him will be difficult in the future. But Tohru says that she loves him so much that her love makes her invincible, and Kyo smiles saying that he is also invincible. The two of them hug each other tightly, but the seconds pass and Kyo is still human. It turns out that when Aikido went to visit Tohru, she told her that she was jealous of Tohru because she is pretty and pure, but Tohru thinks that Aikido is also pretty and pure, and the two want a world together with the Zodiacs, and the two were trying to destroy each other's world. But despite that, Tohru offers her friendship, offers her a chance to create a true bond. Going back to the past, many centuries ago, so far back that the Soma family has no memories of that time, there was a god living on a mountain. Due to his great power and wisdom, he was afraid to interact with humans until one day a cat chose to spend time with God for a long time. God liked having a friend, so he sent many invitations to the rest of the animals, and 12 animals decided to go to meet him on the mountain. The 12 animals, God, and the cat had many banquets until the cat's natural life was over, and God was so sad that he made him drink a potion so that he would be reincarnated into another cat, and then he gave the potion to the other 12 so that everyone can be together for eternity. But the cat did not like being reincarnated since he believed that it was good to close cycles, and for him the moments he spent with God were short but happy, but he hoped that God would make other friends and not continue with the 12 forever. Unfortunately, God and the 12 animals did not take the cat's words well. For them, the cat was rejecting them, so when the cat his second time, none of them cared. In the present, Aikido decides to stop being a god for the Zodiacs. She wants to have ties with other people, and that breaks the curse by releasing the bond of the Zodiacs and saying goodbye forever. I Am feels the broken bond, and the first thing he does is hug Mine and tell her that he loves her. Ritsu feels it too and drops the plates in surprise, and she starts crying. Kizo was with Hiro and Hinata when her curse is broken, and she starts crying, surprising Hiro. Kagura was on the street when she finally felt her freedom. Haru and Rin were together when the curse is broken and Rin bursts into tears, and they hug each other tightly. Hattori feels that he can finally breathe when the bond releases him, although he also cries bittersweetly. Finally, Shigure feels like something has been ripped away from him and his heart hurts, and although his curse has been broken, when Kato realizes that he is free, the first thing he does is break the rosary from his wrist into pieces, while Tohru cries in relief. After that, Tohru and Kyo run to Kazuma's dojo and tell him about the good news, and Kazuma hugs Kyo. Haru and Rin were also there, and Tohru is glad that everyone's curse has been broken. Meanwhile, Yuki runs to meet Machi, although he feels that something is happening to his bond with Akito. When he sees Machi, she gives him a get-well gift for Tohru, as she is grateful that Tohru took care of Yuki, because thanks to her, Yuki was able to notice someone lonely like Machi. Suddenly, Yuki feels that someone is speaking to him. It is God. He came to say goodbye personally because the rat was the first to agree to take the potion to reincarnate and always be united with God. God thanks him for all the moments shared and says goodbye before breaking the bond, and Yuki begins to cry and also says goodbye. Yuki realizes that he is free and immediately hugs Machi, and she asks if she can call him by his first name, and he tells her that she can call him whatever she wants and kisses her. The next day, Akito summons all the Zodiacs to the Soma estate and dresses in the woman's kimono that Shigure gave her. He told her that it was time to say goodbye to the person her parents wanted her to be and welcome to the woman she always should have been. She thought that Shigure was going to be the first to abandon her, but he says that before he pretended that he didn't care about her because it was difficult to see her jumping from arms to arms. But now that the bond is broken, he warns her that if she chooses him, it will be forever. Akito says that just as they are free now, she is also free and tries to do the most difficult thing so far, apologize for the harm she caused them. Days later, Kyo and Tohru go to the cemetery to pay their respects to Kyoko, and Kyo says that he wants to go on a trip to a very distant place, not to escape, but because he always avoided interacting with other people, but now he is free, and he would like to go to other dojos that Kazuma knows, since he wants to gain experience to later run Kazuma's dojo. That makes Tohru happy, and she says that she will go with him, and he asks her to think carefully because they won't be able to come back very often. It is very far and they may have little money, but Tohru has already made her decision, and although it is sad to leave her friends behind, what would hurt her the most is being away from Kyo. Then Kyo thanks her and tells Kyoko's grave that he will keep her promise, he will always protect Tohru. What they didn't know is that when the car hit Kyoko, she desperately thought about Tohru. She wanted someone to protect her treasure, and when she recognized Kyo, she begged him to remember his promise and protect Tohru or she wouldn't forgive him. So now the promise is being fulfilled, and Kyoko can rest in peace with her beloved Katsuya. 18 days later, Kyo and Tohru go to a zoo as their first date, and Hana and Yutani go as chaperones. They don't stop teasing Kyo, but at the end of the date, they say that they knew that one day Kyo would take Tohru away, and they ask him to take care of her. Meanwhile, Yuki goes to visit Kakeru and tells him that he chose a college very far away, and Machi supports him, and Kakeru teases him because the couple already behaves like adults, but Machi does not like the joke and punch him. Months later, Tohru and he. Friends graduate on a beautiful day as if they were closing one stage to open another, and that is precisely what's happening. Kyo and Tohru will travel soon, so they clean Tohru's room, and she can't help but remember all the happy moments she lived with the Somas, and Kyo hugs her so she won't be sad and reminds her that all the Zodiacs love her, and that's a bond that does not break. Meanwhile, Yuki goes to visit Machi and gives her a key to his new apartment. He wants her to be able to visit him whenever she wants without the fear that he might cheat on her, and she accepts it even though she trusts him and promises that she will graduate and catch him up. That makes Yuki happy, and he kisses her. On the other hand, Ritsu tells Kagura that Shigure stopped being a writer, to the joy of Mitsuru, his editor, and Kagura asks him when he will marry Mitsuru. That makes Ritsu very nervous. Meanwhile, the other Zodiacs are sad because tomorrow is Kyo and Tohru's send-off, and everyone loves her so much that they will miss her a lot. Although that doesn't stop Rin from feeling bad for not being able to pretend that nothing happened, she still doesn't forgive Akito and worries that Haru will walk away from her, but he hugs her and tells her not to worry about it. The one who is also preparing for the trip is Yutani, since Kureno has moved to a place near the sea, and she says that she will soon go to visit him. Meanwhile, Ayam and Mine prepared gifts for everyone, since they know that most of them will be sad about Tohru and Kyo's departure. Nearby in a cafe, Hattori and Mayu are on a date, and he tells her that he wants to go on vacation for the first time in his life, and she gladly agrees to go with him. Happiness floods Hattori, proving once again that after winter, spring comes. Elsewhere in the city, Akito and Shigure are on a date, but they must return home to work since Shigure has to send off Akito and Tohru tomorrow, and she won't go. But she plans to visit them another time. In the afternoon, Yuki goes to see Tohru, and tells her that it makes him sad not to see her, but he is happy that she is happy now and thanks her for all the love and kindness she gave him. And finally, he tells her that for him, she was like a mother when he needed it the most, and he thinks that maybe the other Zodiacs see her the same way, a girl with warm and kind hugs. In the end, he tells her that even though they are all going their separate ways, they will all have her in their hearts and thoughts, eager to see her again. After that, Tohru and Kyo left and lived happily for many years, raising a beautiful family and even having grandchildren, and always taking their private lovey-dovey time. Kyoko's story begins with her remembering how her family never behaved as one. Her father was strict and aggressive, and her mother very docile and obedient. When she joined a motorcycle gang, her father slapped her in the face, and her mother did not lift a finger to defend her. She only reproached her for the consequences she would have. Even though Kyoko rarely went to school, she only caused trouble and was constantly scolded by her teachers, until one day they took her to the counselor's office and she met him. As soon as Kyoko enters, she starts ranting at everyone, but the counselor is kind and lets her express all the anger and pain that Kyoko has in her heart, and he realizes that Kyoko is a good girl who just wants to be loved. Kyoko cries, trying to figure out why she's a bad girl and why her life took a bad turn. This moves the counselor, and he says that if she is sad, the best thing is to go out for a walk, and he introduces himself. He is Katsuya. To Kyoko, the situation seems odd because he is a teacher and she is a student, but he tells her that he is not a teacher, just a student teacher, so they can eat together today. And for Kyoko, the ramen was exquisite. Days later, Kyoko talks to Katsuya again and asks him if he had problems for taking her out of school, and he says that his father was a famous teacher at that school, and everyone expects great things from him, but the positive side is that he can bend the rules however he wants without consequences, and before leaving he jokes about her ultra-thin eyebrows, so she starts drawing them longer so that he doesn't make fun of her. But it doesn't work. The days go by and Kyoko and Katsuya begin to meet on the roof to eat and have small talks, and as Kyoko begins to fall for him, weeks later, Katsuya tells Kyoko that his training at the school is over and she thinks he will become a teacher. But he says that he won't, he only play along because his father is very strict. But he had no real intentions of becoming a teacher, and Kyoko realizes that he is a person who feels alone, and that is why he was able to understand her. In the afternoon, Kyoko goes to say goodbye to her, and he says that he will take her wherever she wants to go as a farewell, and she asks him to go to the sea. In the sea, Kyoko starts playing with the water as if she were a puppy, and she thanks him for understanding her and promises that he will go to school, study, and do her best. She wants to confess that she has fallen in love with him despite the age difference, but she is ashamed of how bad her life has been and cries saying goodbye. But Katsuya tells her that this will not be the last time they see each other, since studying alone is boring. It turns out that weeks later, Katsuya started working at a pharmaceutical company, meeting with Kyoko every weekend to help her study. But Kyoko's desire to change her life did not go unnoticed by her gang, and they beat her up. When Kyoko wakes up, she realizes that she is in a hospital and her parents refuse to visit her, and she preferred not to tell Katsuya. When she returned home, her father slapped her in the face and kicked her out of the house. Fortunately, all of this was overheard by Katsuya, as Kyoko's mother called him to tell him what had happened to Kyoko. When Katsuya hears that Kyoko has been disowned by her father, he interrupts them, saying that he does not want him to speak ill of his future wife, since he wants to marry her and will soon bring him the marriage papers for him to sign. But Kyoko's father doesn't care about her anymore. Outside, Kyoko tells Katsuya that he doesn't always have to worry about her. She can take care of herself, and she starts crying because she doesn't want to be a burden on him. But Katsuya says that he really wants to marry her. He fell in love with her the first day he saw her when she cried, telling him about her loneliness, since it is something he could never do. Then Katsuya asks her to choose him despite the age difference. What he didn't know is that she also fell in love with him the first time she saw him, so she accepts and they kiss. Sometime later, they got married and no one congratulated them, since Katsuya's entire family opposed that marriage, except Katsuya's father. When Kyoko met the old man, she was ready to defend her relationship with Katsuya, but instead, the old man gives them a sweet acceptance speech, stating that as time went by, people would understand that they were born to be together. More time later, Kyoko finds out that she is pregnant and cries in Katsuya's arms because she is afraid of not being a good mother, of hurting her child without meaning to, and then her child would say hurtful things to her like she said to her mother. But Katsuya assures her that they will be good parents, that will love and raise a good child, and that reassures Kyoko. Months later, Kyoko and Katsuya go to visit Katsuya's father with baby Tohru, and the old man thanks Kyoko for making his son happy. Katsuya never showed emotions or interest in things because of him. He feels that he suffocated his son for years, and that is why he resents him. But Kyoko assures the old man that Katsuya doesn't hate him, and that's why they visit him so often, and Katsuya accidentally shows it by putting the baby Tohru in the old man's arms. As the years went by, happiness embraced the small family, and even Katsuya and Kyoko wanted to have another child, but on a business trip, Katsuya gets a bad flu and passes away suddenly. Katsuya's family totally blames Kyoko for not taking care of her husband, and she accepts their criticism because she feels guilty too. After that, Kyoko falls into a deep depression and is not interested in anything else, not even Tohru, because her pain suffocates her and does not let her see beyond herself. Her despair is so deep that she wants to see her beloved Katsuya again, and she leaves the house to go to the sea. She sees Katsuya's ghost in the middle of the sea and wants to go with him, until she hears a little girl calling for her mom. That small voice rings an alarm in Kyoko's head, and she runs home because she realizes that she hasn't spoken to Tohru for weeks. That breaks Kyoko, and she hugs her daughter, asking for forgiveness. From that moment on, Kyoko swore to live until Tohru no longer needed her, and she kept her oath because when the accident that took her life occurred, she saw Kyo and prayed that he remember his promise and take care of Tohru and before to go with Katsuya to the afterlife. Her last wish was for Tohru to be happy, and her wish was fulfilled too, because in a faraway place near the sea, Tohru and Kyo lived their love happily as newlyweds.